Welcome, everyone, to the February 27th Public Forum. We have a capacity crowd. I'm wondering if this is actually a record. We have over 100 people signed up to speak today. And so I am going to do a couple of things. The council does have a little bit of work to do. What we're going to do is hold the public forum first, as usual. We'll take a little break, and the council will do a little bit of business that we have to do. We have some time-sensitive ordinances we need to vote on, and then we will open the two public hearings. So I am going to cut the time. This is very short, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to cut it to 1.5 minutes. So I just don't see how we can give everyone a chance without cutting it short, because we're looking at a 4-hour meeting here. So I share that, and I want also share the suggestion that if you're here with a big group of people and several people before you have said more or less what you need to say, you can just get up and say, I agree with so-and-so who spoke before me, and not take your whole 1.5 minutes, and then we'll give everyone a chance. And if you have just something burning that you just must say, we definitely want to hear it. But if it's a repetition, just think about that so that we can be respectful. And then one other thing, just remember that we want everyone to feel safe. This is a big crowd. It can be intimidating to stand up and speak before a big crowd. People are usually pretty excited about what they're talking about. So remember that this is a quiet and respectful place, that we count on the audience to be quiet. You can show your approval this way, but please try to be quiet. And you can nod, you can shake your head, but no outbursts, because it makes it feel less comfortable for everyone. So all of that preamble covered, I will just remind everyone of the rules of the forum. The public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the council on any city-related issues except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. I want to say one other thing. If you are here to talk about the dog or the smoking ordinances, we're hoping you'll just do that during the public hearing and not take up forum time with those issues which are coming later, so that, again, we can sort of consolidate what's happening. So that said, each person, as I've said, will have 1.5 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of your 1.5 minutes. And so, first up, Jennifer Frenzer-Knowlton, followed by Ian Curtis.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Frenzer-Knowlton, and I'm in Betty Taylor's ward. First of all, I want to thank Council for moving forward quickly on the Sanctuary City Ordinance, and hope for your continued quick progress on that. Second of all, I hope you do make the rest stop programs permanent tonight. Third, I want to let you know about the Human Rights Commission's recommendations that were unanimously passed at our last monthly meeting for February. And they include a recommendation to hire Eric Tars of the National Law Center on Poverty and Homelessness, and in order to assist the city in creating an overall strategy and community approach, instead of leaning too heavily on being dependent on ordinances and repeating the past mistakes such as exclusionary zones. We'd also like to recommend that the council advise city manager to facilitate connections between Nightingale Health Sanctuary and those neighborhoods who have already expressed their interest in doing rest stops, and allow more flexibility in our language around that ordinance right now. So undeveloped parks and also some residential areas could be considered. And lastly, the Human Rights Commission would like to invite City Council to another joint session similar to the one that we did in December of 2015. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Curtis, followed by Robin Bloomgarden.
Good evening, City Council, Mayor Venice. My name is Ian Curtis, and I'm a sophomore at South Eugene High School and a member of the Earth Guardians 350 Club. I live in Betty Taylor's ward. I come here tonight to talk to you again about our environment and the dangers of climate change. A lot has happened since my club came here last. Most importantly, Donald Trump was sworn in as the 45th president, and his appointment of Scott Pruitt to the EPA has been successful. In just over a month, the news has been bad. President Trump has reauthorized the construction of the Keystone and Dakota Access pipelines, conducted a purge of governmental websites containing important climate information, confirmed Rex Tillerson as Secretary of State, promised cuts to both the EPA and NASA, Secretary of the Interior nominee Ryan Zinke proposed giving states rights on protected federal land, and the EPA's grants were frozen, to mention a few. Locally, the Oregon Climate Report announced that despite our CO2 emissions goal of 51 million metric tons by 2020, we're still emitting 63 million metric tons. Doug Erickson, a Republican state senator from Washington, is the apparent frontrunner for the job of the Pacific Northwest's section of the EPA. Erickson, a staunch climate denier, said, quote, "Everything is on the chopping block." Also in the news lately were the announcements that the Army Corps of Engineers were considering terminating funding of several Oregon fish hatcheries. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Robin Bloomgarden, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Hi, I'm going to keep this short. My name is Robin Bloomgarden, and I'm in Mr. Pryor's ward. I'm strongly in favor of removing the sunset date on the rest stop and dusk to dawn programs, and I strongly oppose any new downtown developments receiving public subsidies. These investors can make it on their own, or they should not be taking on these developments. End of discussion. I also would like to know what the status is on spreading the rest stops across all districts of the city, and I guess I'll see tonight. And what is the status of the climate recovery ordinance, and when will we see some action on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Kerrigan, followed by Anya Dabrowski.
My name is Michael Kerrigan from Ward 7, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Community Alliance of Lane County. I'm here tonight to support removing the sunset for the rest stops and dusk to dawn programs. Both programs have been very successful in providing safe shelter for the unhoused. As I said at the recent rest stop hearing, they work, they save lives, but they make lives better for all who live in our community, not just the unhoused. A neighborhood where everybody thrives is a vibrant neighborhood. The need for safe shelter is huge. We need a location for the Nightingale Health Sanctuary to move to, and thank you for city staff for the great help with that. And we also need to find more locations for new rest stops. Let's change the rest stop ordinance so they can be placed in undeveloped parks and in appropriate locations in residential neighborhoods. But for this to work, there needs to be neighborhood involvement from day one, like what Heather Selke and the Southeast neighbors are doing now. We need neighborhood leaders to designate possible locations, but they need more locations to work from. So tonight I urge you to remove the sunset clause and soon please work with city staff to modify the rest stop ordinance. We can place rest stops in every city ward. And also I agree with Jennifer, hire Eric Tars to help. He's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anya Dabrowski, followed by David Wade.
Hi, I'm Anya Dobrovolsky. I live in Emily Semple's ward. I am the founder of our community's tool lending library. I'm a fan board member. My husband and I are Egan volunteers. For work, he's a registered nurse, and I'm a sustainability consultant. We are middle class, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but we are the kind of people you want to keep in this community. We volunteer a lot, and our professional lives are aimed at improving the quality of life in our community. We shop at local businesses, we walk and bike, and we live in a small but not tiny home, although tiny homes are also great. We are currently renters. We are ready to buy a house that would give us the option of having a parent move in with us when that becomes a necessary option. Our dream is modest and yet still unattainable in Eugene. This lack of housing options has pushed many of our like-minded friends out already, contributing to the oft-cited brain drain in our community. And I know you'll say that we need to wait a couple of months and the market will tick up in the spring. But right now, there's less housing supply than there was at this time last year. And last summer was dismal for home buyers. We should know. We were looking last summer too. Further, the few houses that are currently available within a walkable, bikeable distance of our workplaces are laughably expensive or in terrible shape. Find me later to talk about the 1,000-foot Cattery grow room, the Mildew Farm, or the hardly permitted falling Tetris house. Seriously, take a look at Redfin and then tell me to stay hopeful. I suggest that you create a zoning designation for missing middle housing types, lower or eliminate SDCs for ADUs, and lower the minimum lot size requirements for ADUs to help address this issue.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. David Wade, followed by Dave Lemon.
Hello, council members. My name is David Wade, and I'm from Emily Simple's Ward 1. I'm a tiny home consultant, and I help Eugene families provide housing to their youth, elderly, and the residents of Eugene. I'm proud to be a part of Tiny Houses, Tiny House Village, a group of college students, workers, and property owners, as well as business owners, who are pulling together the resources, skills, and finances to provide tiny homes as well as micro-villages to our community. We believe hardworking people should be able to build housing security. We want to provide clean, safe, welcoming, and ample housing, and we need City Council's help to do so. We ask that the city remove R1 barriers, such as the minimum lot size for SDUs, the property owner obligation for SDUs, and SDC charges for SDUs as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave Lemon, followed by Jim New.
Good evening. Dave Lemon, Claire Surratt's my councilwoman. I live at 465 Almaden. I'm concerned about my future in the Whitaker. People are fearful to walk the streets at night, and the parks seem to be off limits to the general public. I think recent discussions and proposals aimed at pushing the panhandlers and homeless out of downtown will only cause more problems and hardship in neighboring communities, especially the Whitaker. I agree that the situation downtown is a vexing problem, but simply chasing the street people out of the downtown without a follow-up strategy is foolhardy. The streets may be clean, but you and the council may be sitting around wondering, what the hell do we do now? The merchants may be happy, but other communities, mainly the Whitaker, will be forced into a very difficult situation. My bet is that there will be a mass migration to the Whitaker, to Jefferson Park, Scobert, and Sladden Park, and any nook and cranny between there and Blair Avenue. In the end result, more crime and the need for increased police protection, which won't happen in the present budget situation. Police patrols, which include the Whitaker, encompass a large area compared to other districts in the city, and the police are already understaffed and overworked, so forget any help there. We in the Whitaker I feel, been the city dumping ground for our homeless and disadvantaged. We are a very tolerant and accepting community, but even we have our limits. Council members need to push other communities in the city to set up and get involved in the programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim New, followed by Tom Camus.
Mayor and Council, thank you. My name is Jim New. I'm at Ward 7, and I speak on behalf of 350 Eugene. Thank you for your overwhelming adopting the resolution opposing the transportation of crude oil by rail. We respectively disagree with Mr. Clark's assertion that the resolution was a chic and politically correct gesture, and more of an announcement that the railroad is moving explosive and hazardous materials through the city in an unregulated and unsafe manner, threatening the health and safety of the community. We couldn't agree more that there are many other dangerous products shipped on the tracks and on the I-5 corridor. We welcome Mr. Clark's suggestions on regulating or making safe the frequent practice and would help in his efforts. one piece of legislation before the state legislature that this council can have an influence on is House Bill 2131. It directs the Environmental Quality Commission to adopt rules applying oil spill prevention and emergency response planning requirements to railroads that own or operate high hazard train routes in the state, such as the UP tracks in Eugene. It requires proof of financial responsibility for high hazard train routes, would become effective January 1st, and would make our Eugene and Springfield first responders more prepared for such a disaster. We urge council to contact their state representatives in support of House Bill 2131. Mr. Pulling said it best, the city of Eugene has no control over the railroads, which is a statement that should scare everyone to the point of scheduling lunch dates with all of our state representatives and the governor to discuss the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Camus, followed by Orion Matthews.
Tom Canis, and I am in Emily's ward. I was going to come at you tonight and tell you the same things that I've been telling you for a decade about how you need to do something about the changes for public safety. And I was going to specifically say downtown, but after having some conversations with these folks from Whitaker, how short-sighted is this council? You guys are going to put 2 more ordinances that are not going to be enforced on the board, and you're going to send all these people down to a different neighborhood. Why? Do you guys need more ideas? Here, how about one? Albuquerque's mayor just came up with a great program. They have a van that goes around and they hire people that are transient or homeless to do jobs that are needed to be done around the city. This is 30% of the people that are on the street are no longer on the street permanently. They have jobs and they've actually forwarded. It just seems like you guys are really out of ideas. So instead of sitting here and complaining to you, I would love to sit down with every one of you and come up with some ideas together, because there's nothing outside of the box on here that you guys are doing that's going to change. You guys are pushing this problem along, and you have been doing it for at least a decade. So please be proactive. You have a lot of people here. This is public involvement, and now you're shortening everybody's speech to a minute. What can we get across to you in a minute that we haven't tried in a decade to get across?
Please, we have a lot to get through. We need to get through. Orion Matthews, followed by Lori Powell.
Thank you, City Council members. My name is Orion Matthews, Ward 2. I'm a homeowner in South Eugene and a landlord of a small family home in South Eugene as well. We hope to create a tiny home on our property and our rental property. The owner occupancy rule prevents us from building a tiny home on our rental. I was hoping you will consider removing this rule to support tiny homes as they have substantial benefits for the community. Consider 2 statistics. First, this is the first time in 130 years that Americans aged 18 to 34 are more likely to live with their parents, and the number of adults taking care of aging parents has tripled in the past 15 years. Tiny homes can help provide a dignified, independent living solution, particularly for families struggling with children in this new economy and baby boomers who need long-term care. Tiny Home is pro-family. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lori Powell, followed by Alice Warner.
Good evening, councilors, city manager. My name is Lori Powell. I live in Emily Semple's ward, and I'm here concerning the climate recovery ordinance. Concerning the transportation system plan work session held earlier this evening, I was very heartened to hear that multimodal transportation is a key element to the draft plan and that there is increased funding allocated to this. There were several other very encouraging components to the plan that was discussed, but more so, I was so appreciative of the councilors' questions, so many of you here, concerning the incorporation of the CRO specific performance measures and really holding the plan's feet to the fire for this. Thank you so much. And please continue to advocate for this as the plan moves forward. Transportation system plan is a form of capital improvement, and unfortunately there was no substantive mention of greenhouse gas assessments, the CRO or the Climate Energy Action Plan in the capital improvement program. So please accord the CIP the same level of attention with regard to the CRO as you are doing with the transportation system plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice Warner, followed by Patricia Hine.
My name is Alice Warner, and I live in Mr. Zelenka's ward. First, I wanted to thank you for moving ahead with the sanctuary no registry ordinance. So I very much appreciate that, and especially your work on that. I'm extremely pleased in watching the work session to see the focus of the council on making the local transportation plan a specific plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions with performance measures. I urge you to put the performance measures in, as my counselor is saying. I think those performance measures need to be in before you do a regional plan. And the city attorney, I believe, told you that will work fine because the regional plan's goals are consistent with the CRO. I think it's also clear from the discussion that you need to change the list of projects. Expecting to make a 300% change in walking, biking, and public transit when you're only increasing the funding 50% does not make sense to me. So first there needs to be some modeling, and then probably some look at other cities and how much impact they've been able to have. But does not make common sense that with 1 million extra a year, you're going to hit that target. So I appreciated the questions from the council. I hope you stick with it. It was great to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Hine, followed by Mariah Leung, or Leung.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. It's nice to be back. My name is Patty Hine. I live in the county and call Eugene my hometown. I was privileged to be part of the work session earlier about the transportation system plan and was very heartened as well, and just want to thank you and let everyone know that in Eugene, greenhouse gas emissions from transportation is 30%. So it's very important that we tackle this huge amount in a very considered way. And I really appreciate you slowing down the process tonight to think long and hard about building infrastructure that is for mainly cars and roads out 30 to 50 years. So the same thing that they're trying to do with pipelines and for fossil fuel infrastructure, which we know is going to be a bad mistake since we need to get off fossil fuels. So thanks again. We just really appreciate you thinking about the youth here. We have some new faces who you'll be seeing, and we're delighted to be working with you.
Thank you. Mariah Leung, followed by Susan McCompson.
Greetings, Mariah Leung, Ward 8. I'm very interested in greater citizen control of our society through principled money management, and wonder if Eugene has developed any socially responsible principles for its banking and investing, as have other cities such as Portland and Seattle. Portland has divested from Wells Fargo and other corporations such as Caterpillar and Walmart through recommendations from their socially responsible investment committee. Seattle's efforts to divest from Wells Fargo have been spearheaded by Seattle City Council member Kashama Sawant. As you may know, Wells Fargo helps fund the Dakota Access Pipeline as well as the private prison system, therefore profiting from environmental destruction and mass incarceration. The fraudulent accounts scandal finally culminated in CEO John Stumpf's resignation. In 2012, the U.S. Department of Justice forced Wells Fargo to pay $175 million after they engaged in discriminatory lending practices against Black and Hispanic borrowers. I'm here to ask what, if any, relationship the City of Eugene has with Wells Fargo, and will appreciate receiving this information. My email is on the speaker request slip. You may all want to know also. I and many others look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan McCompson, and followed by Sam Hahn. Susan? Oh, there you go. Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. My name is Susan Macomson, and I am in Mr. Zelenka's ward.
Best word.
So I spent Saturday at a budget hearing, and it was interesting for me because I've just moved to Eugene, but I lived in Portland 15 years ago, and I walked to help one of those senators get elected into the House at the time. He's now in the Senate. And there were a lot of people in that room that were there 15 years ago. And the really sad thing is they were talking about the same things: school funding, health care, and the environmental issues. And nothing's gotten done because we give subsidies to the wealthiest corporations in this state. And those subsidies are taken off our backs. And it happens here. It happens here in some of the buildings that have been built in Eugene. Olive Street, Franklin Street. And, you know, it concerns me to watch this wonderful state just play the safe card, because the safe card actually isn't safe. And I want to thank you for your budget meeting tonight. It was really, really good. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam Hahn, followed by Catherine Cronin.
These are for you guys to look at before you guys hopefully you get a chance to look at that before you consider that downtown has bigger problems than Whitaker at the moment. Forgive the disorganization of all these thoughts. I'm feeling like I'm taking crazy pills, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually thinking about leaving Eugene. I'm experiencing personally a lot of crime and stuff that's happened to the point where I can no longer, I'm taking a leave of absence from the Whitaker Community Council because I need to deal with personal issues directly related to the lack of policing and a lot of the homelessness that we have in the area. And they are very separate issues, but obviously have an incredible amount of crossover that I don't see getting discussed as often as I'd certainly like to see. To spend the amount of time that is, and the amount of resources that are spent trying to clean up downtown, whatever that means. Us in Whitaker know what it means. It means spend a crap load of money to shove everybody into Whitaker for another 4 weeks, let them trickle back, and then do it all over again. We need more police. We need them really, really quickly. And at the same time, to have more resources going into and more high-paid city staff people working on developments and tax subsidies for large developers to come in and take care of development and have one single person, I think, in charge of the homeless situation here in Eugene. Reagan is the one person that's out there doing it. That's crazy to me. We need homeless shelters. Rest stops are great. The pace at which they're getting dispersed amongst the city is not even close, and it's really a small solution.
Thank you. Catherine Cronin. You can always do this. You can always do this. Catherine Cronin, followed by Dana Gould.
I'm the mother of the girl who was stabbed with life-threatening wounds on the 6th during the robbery spree. And I want to talk about public safety and human services, the core issues, drug addiction, homelessness, more crime due to addiction, and mental health issues. For many, many years, we have lost funding for important services like at least 17. We as a community of Lane County should be horrified at ourselves for the continued breakdown of the Lane County system, as well as the need to allocate funding to services that are needed. We are in crisis. People currently are processed by computer and kicked out or sanctioned for a few days. The system is complicit in no accountability and setting people up for continued failure. Why charge them if you're not going to hold them accountable? Our young people's future are not looking bright when so much suffering is going on. And how many more generations of children exposed to this? I guarantee not one of these kids, and I say that loosely because I'm 50 and I've watched them for 20 years, strung out, grew up planning to be a junkie, prostitute, homeless with mental health problems. They're not scary. Try talking to them. And I just wonder what we're going to do to get the funding to help these people, because the smoking ordinance and the dogs and all these other problems downtown, that's not going to change anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Dana Gould, followed by Peggy Thomas.
My name is Dana Gould, and I live and work in the Whitaker neighborhood, and I'd like to endorse the statements of both previous speakers. I am very concerned about the addition of potentially further rest stop areas to a neighborhood that's already overburdened with social services, and I I'm afraid to walk around at night by myself. I cannot walk through Washington Jefferson Park, sometimes even during the daytime. I have an active involvement in my community. That's why I'm here tonight, and I am very concerned about creating new ordinances that simply push people who are unhoused and with mental health issues that are not being addressed into the surrounding neighborhoods, including mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Peggy Thomas, followed by Maria Bybee.
Hi, I'm Peggy Thomas. I live in Trainsong neighborhood. I wanted to talk tonight about the budget shortfall for the state of Oregon. We have like $1.8 billion or so. It keeps getting a little smaller, thank goodness. But what's happening is we voted to secure funding for schools. We voted to secure funding for veterans. And the marijuana money is dedicated to other sources besides senior and disability services. And there's already going to be more homeless, mentally ill people talking about closing the Junction City Hospital because the state doesn't have money. And there also has been many discussions about they're changing the service priority levels for disabled people and seniors. And what happens is they take people out of, they're going to be taking people out of foster homes. Now the state is prepared to pay like the first month's rent and the deposits and stuff, but that's it. And without the services that help keep those disabled people and seniors in their homes, they're going to end up in the streets. And so, I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be just, I mean, the mentally ill and disabled people, and there's nothing to help them. So we need the city to be doing some statewide advocacy at this point to help prevent what, I mean, could possibly become more of an issue than what we already have.
Thank you. Maria Bybee, followed by Betty Snowden, excuse me.
Hi, my name is Maria Bybee, and I live in Ward 1, and these are the issues that I'd like to put at the top of your agenda. First, the funding and creation of the public homeless shelter and making the Rest Stop program permanent. Second, divesting Eugene from our contract with U.S. Bank so that we stop supporting a bank that funds a parent company of the Dakota Access Pipeline. And finally, we need City Council to follow through on the climate recovery ordinance. Our city made a promise to take important steps to decrease our environmental impact, and we need to follow through on that for the survival of our future generations. Lastly, I'd like to thank City Council for the work you've done on making Eugene a sanctuary city, and I hope that can be finalized quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Snowden, followed by Javon Peck.
Betty Snowden, Eugene, Oregon, to our mayor, city council men and women. On November 21st, 2016, my family arrived at our business. There was a group of people in front of the door blocking access, and they would not leave. Leader of group said he was going to sick his dog on us and kill us. He had a hatchet, knife, and we had to endure racist hate remarks, foul language, horrible names. More than 5 police officers and the Red Hats arrived on the scene. The leader of the group told one of the police officers he was going to kill him, cut him up into little pieces, and put him in a basement. Next day, he did the same thing, still harassing, we were standing with personal security. He pushed us out of the way, used more racial language. He finally was arrested 3 days later. We went to court, and he was not homeless. He lived in a 4-wheel trailer, but carried a sign asking for money. Homeless people are being blamed for some things that they are not doing. A dog and a smoking ban is not the answer. We need laws to rid downtown of criminal behavior. It's criminal behavior. And there needs to be prosecution. No trespassing, no loitering. These are on the books and they need to be enforced. The police downtown and the Red Caps do a great job with what they have to work with. Give more funding, and we love you.
Thank you. You got? You do this? Thank you, Javon, I think, Peck? Javon? And followed by Sophie Bybee.
Javon Peck, Ward 7. Hi. So I'm here to talk about the Whitaker. Crime is pretty much gone crazy down there. Homeless population has been insane down there for the longest period of time. And the city of Eugene does, at least it seems to us, dump all the crap, either when you guys got a problem, into the Whitaker or around its periphery. And beyond saturation point. We are extremely unhappy. The response of the local constabulary is lackluster at best. I understand this whole greasy wheel, basically maybe whoever makes the most sound and who calls and the most that the police basically show up for. But the majority of the crimes actually happen in a very small area in the city of Eugene, the actual physical violence, the actual drug abuse, and that's in the Washington Jefferson Park and other areas right by the river. And the city basically has a health epidemic. Most of these people have mental illnesses. It's 60% of them from, more or less, which means that this is a health crisis. This is an epidemic. This is not just a random thing that's going to go away. If the city was being hit by tuberculosis, you wouldn't be basically saying, hey, maybe we'll just push it off for the next, people, anyway.
Thank you. Sophie Bybee, followed by Kathy Feely.
Hello, my name is Sophie Bybee, and I live in Emily Semple's ward. Mariah Bybee spoke to you a moment ago as my big sister, so when I tell you she's usually right, you have it on good authority. And she's right about following through on the CRO, she's right about the public shelter, and she's right about divesting Eugene from U.S. Bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Feely, followed by Brad Foster.
Hello, my name is Kathy Feely. I live in Whitaker. We need to talk about the homeless population and what the reality is in Whitaker. Whitaker is just completely destabilized, and it's getting worse every day. I know of 3 houses in this last year that have been either boarded up or turned into businesses, and those residents are no longer living there because they've been driven out by the problems in Whitaker. Some of the pictures I think that were distributed are of, hundreds of needles and garbage. You're going to have a cholera epidemic with all of the people that are shitting all over Whitaker. The mission feeds and houses 400 people. 600 people get fed but do not have a place to live. We also have several of the camps there that aren't supposedly recognized, but do exist, like the storage shelters on 2nd and Polk. We need for the city to turn around the destabilization of Whitaker. We need for you to find funding within the city for the mentally ill and the substance abuse. We need to enforce laws, and we need to help Whitaker by providing urban renewal funding through NIDCO for first-time home buyers to encourage people to buy back there, because the people that were looking for housing that we're talking earlier, they're not looking in Whitaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Foster, followed by Susan Thomas.
Hi, I'm Brad Foster, I live in Ward 7. I want to talk about the Whitaker too. I want to echo what Sam Hahn said. We've got people looking to just pack up and leave who've been here forever. Personally, I've stopped on a building expansion I was going to do. We're no longer going to expand our business either and hire people. That's out. We've had it. Due to actions by the city council with all the camps in and on the edge of the Whitaker, inaction from EPD who refuses to answer calls in the Whitaker. We've got a situation where 20% of the population in the Whitaker is homeless. That's more than the 14% who are homeowners. And we can't hardly take it anymore. Let me walk you through a typical night in the Whitaker. Last Monday night, it's 1 a.m. A homeless tweaker tries to break into 7 houses, all within 5 doors of my house. 3 of my neighbors call the cops. You know what they're told? Hey, call us back when he gets in. He did finally get in. He broke through a sliding glass door, Fortunately, the residence was unoccupied. The woman who lives there, she's dying right now. She's in her last few months of life. She gets to spend the next little while cleaning up all the glass. Oh, but EPD, true to their word, did finally show up. It only took you a couple hours. Okay, this isn't working. We need to stop funding big ticket items, big developers and stuff. Fund a homeless shelter, put it outside the Whitaker, get the camps out of the Whitaker, the unlawful ones as well as the lawful ones. We're oversaturated. 20% is too much.
Thank you. Susan Thomas, followed by Kimberly Glades. Glacier, thank you. Glader.
My name is Susan Thomas, and I live in Ward 7. And I was just listening to what Brad said, so I'm feeling a bit emotional because I was there that night when this drug addict person was running around. I knew that there was no use to call the police. He was actually out of town. So it was just myself and my son there. And I looked out the window when I see one guy running this way and someone banging on the door. And then morning. And then the next day, okay, it's nice and bright. I'm riding to my appointment. I go under the first underpass on a pinch point in the bike path. And there, on the left, is a chop shop. One guy has like 8 or 10 bikes. The person on the right, I don't know, there's a little fire. The guy has a 10-inch blade. And then there's, 5 or 6 other people. And I haven't even gotten to the 2 other underpasses that I have to get to. Usually there's a few loose dogs, someone lying on the ground, and lots of stuff under there. You have to slow way down, otherwise you're going to hit somebody. So we need a place for these people to be at night, in the middle of the night, so when we come home from work at 11 or from the movies at 11 or whatever we're doing at 11, we're not confronted with some big guy with a 10-inch knife. And also for those people, they shouldn't be there. They also shouldn't be there in the day either, because it's just not safe. It's not safe for them, and I don't feel safe either. And I'm thinking of leaving Eugene too.
Thank you. Kimberly Glader. Gladen, thank you, sorry. Followed by Christian Fox.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Gladen. I've lived downtown for the last 17 years. I've been coming to this council meeting, and I'm going to speak to you about something I've spoken to you about for the last 10 years. One of Eugene's biggest problems is that you've been allowing open drug deals in the downtown and on our streets. You've been allowing open drug deals on the Lane County Courthouse Plaza on Saturdays during Saturday market. It's kind of a free-for-all over there. They don't have to follow any of the rules, laws, or ordinances that anyone else in the town has. No liability insurance, no fire inspection, nothing. And they openly deal drugs over there to children, to adults, to anyone. And this has been allowed to go on for years, last 10 years. And that's the biggest problem here, because it's brought a lot of drug dealers to our town. It's brought a lot of drug addicts to our town. It's brought a lot of other criminals, child predators, sex predators, because you can drug a child over there and haul him off later to a hotel and sell him off to your friends. Until you get a handle on that, and I'm sick and tired of you in the county pushing this back and forth, and I have talked to the county and told it that's free speech. Well, I'm sorry, drug dealing is not free speech. This is a crisis because you've done nothing for 10 years, and it's time you start dealing with the drugs in this town and stop making Eugene a mecca for drug dealers.
Thank you. Christian Fox, followed by Jill, no last name.
Hello, Council, Mayor, Manager. Christian Fox, Ward 1, Eugene. I manage commercial buildings in downtown Eugene and Whitaker area. Pacific itself manages multiple properties. Tonight I'm here to relay an event that is one of fact. This last summer, one of the restaurants downtown in one of the buildings that I manage, which has had a busy lunch hour at times, at the end of the lunch, one of their patrons was departing out the Broadway Avenue exit side and was confronted by panhandlers. The panhandlers asked for money, to which the exiting patron declined. This particular patron, a woman, was then fearful as the panhandler approached and got closer and asked again, repeating their request, that since they had just been in a restaurant, they must have some spare money, and the patron declined. The panhandler then spit in the patron's face and cursed at them for further insult. The woman, who until that moment had simply been enjoying her lunch, but now had an extremely negative experience, left in disgust, of course. And this restaurant, unfortunately, has many documented instances of this kind of aggressive behavior near their storefront entry, which they have seemed to be very little ability to protect and both their patrons and their business right in their own storefront. They have documented that since this last spring, when the surge of vagrants and panhandlers started, that their business sales have declined every single quarter. Please take some leadership to deal with these issues.
Thank you. Jill, followed by Dan Young.
I can take them. I'll make sure they get them.
Well, actually, I'm going to hold this one up for a second, just for a second. I came here back here. I lived here for 28 years, ever since I was out of high school. And
Mike, use the mic.
I came here in the 70s, and it was a lively town. And in the 80s, it was a lively town. And I came back here a couple weeks ago and planted over in the university area. And my problem right now is actually parking. But I didn't know that this was going on tonight. But the cigarettes, I have something to say about. Try like other cities do. Paris charges $60 if you drop a cigarette on the ground. I don't know about the dogs, but my big thing is I can't make a living here if I can't get a vending license just to sell on the street. Because up in Portland, you can just get it and print it for 12 cents, and I sell artwork. So you get a vending license, and then you can sell with permission. You keep the sidewalk clean. People like it, and you can make quite a bit of money. And it livens up the town. Really, really livens up the town. And would you rather somebody laying there or using it as a way to make money? You know, I don't know.
Good.
It just makes me mad. Every morning, I call the city. They said come to the meeting. Get it, let people sell. Keep the church.
Thank you. Thank you. Dan Young, followed by Misha Seymour.
To the previous speaker, come to the Saturday market. We would love to have you. Yeah, hang on. Okay, I'm in the mayor's ward. I live 3 blocks from here. I work at the Saturday market, and I have a small part-time job. I am your missing link. What Kimberly Gladen said to you, I would not only like to reiterate, I would like to invite all of you. I challenge all of you. Come to the Saturday market any Saturday after April 1st, and ignore us and just watch what's going on right over here on this Free Speech Plaza. It is amazing. It is getting nationwide attention. People are flocking here because between the social services package that is offered by you, between what is perceived as very sympathetic attitude towards the homeless, the traveler people are amazing. In my day, we called them transients, When I have a kid of 20, badgering me, whose shoes cost more than my car, that I'm not giving him money, I say, forget that. I want you people to come to the Saturday market. I want you to come with me over to the Free Speech Courthouse and watch what people are doing here in the name of free speech and freedom of expression. I so totally stand with Betty Taylor on this, I can't tell you enough, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Misha Seymour, followed by Michael Gannon.
Oh, everyone is wonderful, a true dear delight. The sparkle in your smile cheers up the night. Your gentle, majestic hearts and life-breathing creativity. Oh, everyone is wonderful. You're wonderful to me. That's from my song, Everyone is Wonderful. I'm a musician, but I'm treated like a leper. Social leopard. Eugene is your probably where several years ago had a thing say that they're the best city for the arts and the outdoors. I'm not so sure that's really true. I was playing music at 8th and Willamette outside the parking garage for like 20 years. And recently, a security person said, I can't play inside a parking garage. I wasn't inside, I was outside. And there was a place out of the rain there. And there were, and one of the things I do is do stuff to enhance self-esteem. And also, I was outside the parking garage. Also at the libraries, people are probably aware, they've been piping music out. And the library people said they're doing that to drive gangs away. There was no guy. I was there one time for 5 weeks, and there was a guy that had gone through a thing to go through to get off drugs, and I encouraged him. And he said, "Gee, maybe he is something."
Thank you.
So I think that we should change this around encourage people to do music and the arts rather than be hypocritical and treat people like a bunch of scum.
Thank you. Michael Gannon, followed by Stefan Streck.
Hi, I'm Michael Gannon. I live in the city. I would like to sort of continue some things that I brought up at the hearing on the ordinance to lift the sunset on the safe spots. I kind of think that the city council is involved in maybe one of the early Trumpisms at the local level in the 21st century. The Nightingale Camp, I happen to live in it. It's in the Whitaker now because the mission has given opportunity for people to stay there because they got caught up in a bureaucratic snafu between the county and the city regarding a space that was designated to handle potentially 40 people across from the soccer field on MLK Boulevard. The city is downsizing that dramatically and is about to expel the Nightingale Camp. And yet, just as in Washington, Trump tells us these things aren't happening that we see with our own eyes, we're watching this camp get seared from the map of Eugene while the city is talking about having these camps or safe spots in every neighborhood and failing because it's operating on significant stereotypes towards the poor.
Thank you. Stefan Streck, that's our final public forum speaker.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming here tonight. I've missed you all a bunch. I've been very, very busy. My name is Stefan Streck, and my favorite ward is Betty Taylor's ward. I just got to say that. Anywho, this past month, 2 months ago, I had to go off down to Washington, D.C. to help inaugurate our president, Mr. President Donald Trump. I just really love saying that. Anyways, we have done so much work in just this past 30 days. And God works in mysterious ways. It is great to see all these people down here to voice their opinions about the stuff that is going on, because that is important, and that's the best part of democracy. Anyways, on my way back, God, doing his thing, got me back all my flight money. I got $800. I made money on my trip to go across the country, do all this stuff. Anyways, you people, I just want to give you a head start, because I'm taking Peter DeFazio's job in 2018. The GOP loves me, and I just want to give you people a head start. I mean, I'm against this legislation, but I do hope that you pass it, because it'll make everyone else very upset at you. And I honestly need all the help I can get. Beyond that, I mean, just watching the Democratic Party fight against each other, it is like a three-legged donkey in a race against a full-grown elephant, full speed. And it is, I mean, I feel bad for all these people that are so depressed. My dad's a psychiatrist. I'm trying my best to help you people too. I love you all.
Thank you. Thank you. And that closes the public forum. Thank you all for testifying, and thank you for being so respectful of the time limits. Do we have any council comments? Okay, Chris. Claire.
Mike.
Mike. Okay, Chris, Greg. Chris, take it, Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. I really appreciate everybody coming out and speaking, and I was particularly moved by the folks from the Whitaker, and I think it really raises a significant question about moving the problem around versus dealing with the problem. And so I heard that loud and clear, and I absolutely want to take that into consideration, heartfelt. A question to the city attorney. Does the city currently have a loitering ordinance on the books?
No.
No, we do not.
No.
What would the legality be? Would it be possible for the city to create a loitering ordinance?
No.
Why not?
Back in the early 60s and the 70s, loitering laws across the nation were independently challenged in various courts, and they were all declared unconstitutionally as void for vagueness. In 1972, the Oregon Court of Appeals looked at a Portland loitering law, and it was declared void for vagueness.
So if a person wanted to lay down on the sidewalk, for example, what could the Eugene Police Department legally do to stop that person from laying on the sidewalk?
We have various ordinances currently in place right now that have to do with obstructing the passage along sidewalks. We have one specifically that relates to impeding traffic along a sidewalk with the intent of preventing people from moving. So we have a number of various code provisions currently in place.
But they primarily deal with blocking passage along the sidewalk.
They do, yes.
What about rules with regard to panhandling? Legally, what could we do to limit, restrict, or end panhandling? Is there a way to legally stop panhandling?
No.
Why not?
It is under Article 1, Section 8 of the Oregon Constitution. It is, the courts have said, panhandling, soliciting money is protected speech. So when it comes to restricting someone's ability to ask for money, we cannot adopt laws that do that. There are, City of Springfield adopted an ordinance that restricted, it's in their vehicle code, and it stops and it prevents people from passing things outside of their vehicle. But that is because it gets to behavior within the vehicle. It doesn't prevent anybody from standing on the street corner asking for the money. It is a vehicular code provision that prevents somebody from passing something outside their car. So, but could the city adopt an ordinance that says somebody cannot ask for money? No, not constitutionally.
So in terms of resting on the sidewalk, panhandling for money, or lawyering, the city of Eugene actually does not have a legal ability to pass laws based on either the Constitution or state law.
Correct. That's correct. When it comes to lying on the sidewalk, there's other various provisions. Portland has over the last 15 years, Portland's had various versions of what are called sit-lie ordinances. And they have something in place now that was a result of various court decisions that limits within certain spaces. So you've got 6 foot versus 8 foot and prevents people. So it's not that nothing can be done. It's that could you have something that just says you can't sit or lie in that public, anywhere in that public area? No.
Okay. Okay. That's very helpful. I just wanted to kind of get a sense for what our parameters were as a city in terms of what our options are, what they're not. I understand drug dealing and aggressive behavior are illegal, but barring that, just general panhandling and loitering, it would be very difficult to actually create laws against those. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Syrett.
Thank you. I really want to thank folks from Whitaker who came down to raise the alarm bells about the public safety issues down there. It's very, very important to hear from you. The chief of police is here in the room. And I will be taking your comments into consideration as we consider what we want to do around downtown, which happens to be the focus of a later public hearing, because I recognize that there is a displacement concern. I I do think it's a little unfair to say we deliberately dump things on Whitaker. I think it's a matter of geography and where people find refuge from other things that are going on in the city. But unfortunately, it does have a disproportional impact on Whitaker and to some extent Trainsong and even further up River Road. So that's going to be an important consideration for me as we think about what actions we're going to take downtown and how we can do, if we can, take actions downtown that don't end up negatively impacting other parts of our community, particularly those parts of my ward. I also am concerned about the reports of drug dealing on the Free Speech Plaza and that Lane County sheriffs are deeming that free speech. I suspect that's not exactly what they said, but there does seem to be an enforcement challenge there. Whose jurisdiction is it? Who should be enforcing? We don't typically get down to those kind of nitty-gritty levels as the city council, but since we've heard from folks about it today, and I do know that it's an issue, I would like to learn a little bit more about how our law enforcement addresses that and what their position is on the activities on the Free Speech Plaza. And then I also want to let folks know, excuse me, that Councilor Simple has sponsored a work session poll, which I believe has been approved, to look into creating public shelter. It will be a long road. It's not going to happen tomorrow or next month. But assuming there's majority support for that, I will certainly support it, but I will also make sure it does not get placed in Whitaker or Trainsong. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate most of the public testimony tonight. Thank you very much. City Attorney, we could permit panhandling, couldn't we?
No.
Why not?
It would be what is considered a prior restraint.
I read just recently in 2 cases in Oregon where that's the case. I believe one of them's Ashland. Can you tell me why they are? Would I be correct to assume that they are operating in what would be violation of state constitution, but doing it anyway?
I've looked at Ashland's municipal code.
Mm-hmm.
They have some provisions. I'm not aware of a permitting requirement for panhandling. They have a code provision that restricts panhandling within a certain number of feet of outside diners and within a certain number of feet of ATMs. That's what I'm aware of for Ashland and panhandling.
I'll pass you the article.
Okay.
I'll email it to you. Here's a larger point, though. I brought this up the last time we had a serious conversation about downtown public safety. I appreciate specifically the Whitaker folks, too. I share your concern. I don't want to push problems from one part of the city onto the other. But at the same time, that no solution to some of the issues we face is a one-dimensional solution. There is one dimension of the series of solutions that we need to put into place that we're doing least well. And from my perspective, that's enforcement, and here's why. As City Attorney mentioned, there are already a number of ordinances in place that restrict or call violations behavior that happens in our downtown every day. And it's not that our officers don't write tickets. They do for plenty of the violations that take place from unlicensed animals or animals not on their leash or laying in the wrong place or blocking access. But you talk with the officers who walk downtown. I have. Stopped in the public safety station the other day. Had a long chat with 4 officers who were in there. And they will tell you, as many of the downtown business owners will, my friend Tom, I'm sure, will back me up on this, that a lot of times when someone's given a ticket by an officer, they'll wad it up and throw it in their face. Because they know we don't mean it. They know we don't have the jail space to hold them. And by we, I'm not talking about the officers. I'm talking about the will of the council as a whole and the way we approach this. We have a lack of jail beds that I hope we are going to fix during the course of our budgeting time. We have a lack of city prosecution, and this county as a whole has a 3% failure to appear rate? We have to mean that we are serious about holding people accountable before we make new laws making things illegal. We have plenty of them. So for those planning on testifying tonight why we should ban smoking and dogs, you're going to have to tell me when we don't enforce it how that helps the situation at all. Thank you.
Councilor Evans?
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank everyone for coming out as well. When I put out a work session poll last month with regard to public safety, it was not just about downtown public safety. It was about public safety not only downtown, but in the neighborhoods as well, particularly in the adjacent neighborhoods to downtown, because these issues do not happen in isolation. And so I was unable to attend that work session because I had a prior commitment out of town. I hope that we are going to be looking at a more comprehensive and strategic way of addressing these issues, because they're not localized to downtown. That's what we're seeing, is a high concentration of undesirable activity downtown, undesirable activity at Whitaker, undesirable activity in a lot of neighborhoods in our community, some of which is rising to the level of felonious behavior, and I believe the police address that as best as they can. But you know, the other behaviors, we have to have a broader, more strategic approach, and that includes public safety and it includes human services. And both Councilor Syret and I serve on the Human Services Commission, and I could tell you, we get money from the state of Oregon that goes through the county, and there isn't a lot of money to deal with the level of human service needs that we have in this community or in this state, quite frankly. And so we're going to have to look at things a lot differently than we have had before. And, you know, when I make a request for a work session, I hope that request is honored to reflect the intent of the work session, which is we need to have a comprehensive way of looking at public safety, not just downtown, but throughout the city, in our neighborhoods, and we also need to address the human service issues, people who are houseless and don't have the resources to deal with the numerous problems that they have, whether that be mental illness, drug, alcohol abuse, all of it. It's not going to get better anytime soon. And given the situation we have nationally, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. But I think all of us up here are committed to trying to address the problems that we need to address, and we're here to work with you.
Thank you. Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, I agree with what Greg just said. It is a complex issue. I wanted to thank all the people from the Whitaker that came here to talk to us about the concerns that you have about just pushing bad people from downtown into the WIT. I share your concern, and public safety isn't just a downtown issue. It's a citywide issue. But as you've heard, the legal and constitutional solutions are not that easy to come by. On the public shelter, I voted in favor of the work session. In fact, Emily beat me by a day in putting one out. But it is not a panacea. A 100-bed shelter costs millions of dollars and will cost millions to operate on an annual basis. And it would serve very, very few people. There's got to be better solutions than that. That's probably the most expensive solution for us to look at. Not saying we shouldn't go down that path, but it's going to be very expensive to sustain. On the CRO committee, the first meeting is scheduled. Members were very busy, and the first date open is April 6th at 5:30, and the place is still yet to be determined.
Great. Any other comments from council? Councilor Foley?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for coming down, especially the people from the Whitaker. I understand your problem. I'm glad that finally somebody in the public is starting to come forward and trying to separate homeless issues from criminal behavior. Councilor Clark and I have been trying to get that point across for many, many months. And every time we seem to talk about criminal behavior, we get chastised for blaming homeless people. And we're saying, no, it's the criminal behavior that we're trying to address. So whoever that speaker was early on, thank you very much for coming up and trying to sort that out. And to Councilor Evans' concerns, while you were absent from that meeting, I did, in fact, bring up the issue of that anything that we do to address the criminal behavior in the downtown area, that we needed to make sure that we didn't cause any unintended consequences in other parts of town. And what we apply in the downtown area can also be applied throughout the entire community, because it's not right. And, you know, in my ward, we're already starting to see an increase of some of that activity moving up the Coburg Road area, primarily over the 105 Coburg interchange. I receive complaints from people all the time about the congestion of the criminal behavior that goes on underneath the bicycle paths that go underneath. I've had people tell me that they've actually been stopped on their bicycles by people. I've had people tell me that they were so concerned because of the illegal activities going on that they've actually turned around and they won't go that way anymore. So I'm aware of what's going on, not only in the downtown area, but it is starting to kind of do a creep out into the entire community, and we need to really address this soon. And then to the comment about holding people accountable, I brought this up at a prior meeting, that we have currently 10 beds available to us at the Springfield Municipal Justice Center. And it's on a pay-as-we-use basis. So it's not a deal where we put out the money for the year, and if we don't use them, we don't get the money back. The information I got from the jail commander at Springfield is we only used about half of those 10 beds for the entire year. And they've got more beds available if we need them. So when it comes to holding people accountable, I realize that it's an expense. It's about $85 a day, I think it was, for Springfield to hold a prisoner. We've got some jail beds at the county jail. We've got some at the Springfield Justice Center. And we do need to hold people accountable for any convictions that they do receive.
Thank you. Any other comments from council?
Just one. The reason the Springfield beds aren't filled is because they're so limited in how and who can use them. It has to be a male only, has to be healthy, can't be violent, can't have any health issues or
but they're still available.
All right.
Those are hard to fill.
We will debate this at a different time. Thank you. So I just want to thank everyone. Thank you for your comments. Always incredibly helpful for us to get a full perspective. And bear with us. We're going to do a little bit of council business, so we're sure to get it done, and then we'll open the public hearing. So, Councilor Zelenka, you have a motion?
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, thank you. That is approved. Next, we have city manager ordinance. Oh, I guess we just need a. Do you need to read it, or can you just move on it?
I do not need to read it.
Okay. A motion?
I move to adopt Council Bill 5166, an ordinance adopting hazardous substance user fees for fiscal year commencing July 1, 2017.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor. Thank you. That passes. Okay, the second one.
I move to adopt Council Bill 5168, an ordinance removing the sunset dates for the rest stops and dusk to dawn programs.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Syret?
So I just wanted to ask the city manager, we heard from a member of the Human Rights Commission, and I'm not sure if she was saying this was formal recommendation from them or her recommendation, but our action tonight is strictly to extend the sunset dates so we don't
remove them.
remove the sunset dates so the ordinances continue to be in place, but we haven't made any other significant changes to the ordinances. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I would like us to maybe schedule another work session on these two items, because I do think there's some good suggestions in terms of thinking about locations and the parameters that we set around the rest stops, that there might be some opportunity to expand those slightly, so that we have more opportunities for citing other rest stops in other parts of the city. So I don't know that that's on our agenda, but I'd like it to be, and if it's not, I can put out a work session poll to make that happen.
Councilor Polling?
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion. When these rest stops were first started in the dusk to dawn programs, I was a little skeptical based on some previous behaviors at some of the illegal camps. Over the years that the rest stops have been operating, it's proven that it is a worthwhile program. It is helping people. And I think a lot of credit needs to go to the people that oversee and operate and run these rest stops. They do incredible work. They're volunteers. Without them, I don't know if we could have done this. So based on basically the track record of what's been occurring at the rest stops, I have no problem voting in favor of this. And I would recommend that and I don't know if it's already been done, Mr. City Manager, but that the chairs of all the local neighborhood organizations are contacted by folks wanting to operate or run rest stops in all the different wards. Because, even though we live in the ward we represent, there are areas that maybe we don't know that are, fit the parameters, or the people living in the immediate area are willing to work with the operator of one of these rest stops. So if there's some way that we can ensure, or if it's already been done, that the neighborhood leaders from each individual neighborhood association has the contact information for these folks, or these folks have the contact information, so we can start moving forward.
Any other comments? Ready for a vote? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 in favor. That ordinance passes. Thank you. And the final one?
I move to adopt Council Bill 5164, an ordinance to amend the marijuana tax appeal provisions in the Eugene Code.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor? 8 in favor, so that passes as well. Thank you all very much, and thank you, audience, for your patience as we just worked our way through that. So, I'll now open the public hearing. City Manager, want to introduce this?
Yes, Mayor. This is an ordinance concerning the prohibition of dogs within the downtown core. And this public hearing is an opportunity for the public to provide feedback to the Eugene City Council on a proposed ordinance to restrict dogs in an area of the downtown. The purpose of the ordinance is to promote health and safety of pedestrians and dogs in downtown. The current ordinance is based on a similar rule that was put in place near the university to help deal with large numbers of dogs that were concentrated in a high pedestrian traffic area, similar to current conditions in downtown. The restrictions would not apply to a dog whose owner lives or works in the area, or to service animals. This ordinance is one piece of a broad range of efforts aimed at improving the public's experience and perception of downtown Eugene, including increased public safety presence, connecting those in need with appropriate services, partnering with downtown businesses and others to support positive activities, and working to make downtown's public spaces vibrant, engaging, and inviting.
Thank you. So just a reminder that those wishing to speak must have already completed one of these. We have a good pile of them. So once again, I'm going to hold you to 1.5 minutes. And when you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and if you're a Eugene resident, your ward if known, and the timer will let you know when your time is getting close. So first up, Margaret Bry, followed by Nick Balthrop.
Hello, I'm Margaret Bry.
I live in Ms. Syrett's ward, the part that extends into downtown. I live in right against the Butte, Skinner's Butte, and I walk through downtown often. I'm here to speak against the proposed ordinance that would ban dogs from downtown because it would discriminate against homeless folks who, by definition, have no home in which to leave their dogs when they come downtown. This seems to be a criminalization of homelessness. In yesterday's Register Guard, there was an opinion piece by Eric DeBurr, B-U-H-R, who's the co-executive director of Community Supportive Shelters in Eugene. He offers several helpful ideas. I would like to briefly quote him. A day center downtown could help, a place where people can access social services, pick up temporary work, have access to internet, get out of the weather, take care of hygiene needs, and exist without being a burden, close quote. And in the following paragraph, he adds, risky, sort of, but so is making new laws that, oh my goodness.
Thank you. It's very short. Yes, thank you.
For the ban.
Thank you so much. Nick Balthrop, followed by Megan Richter.
Council members, thank you very much. I work in downtown, and I'm downtown in the core almost every single day. I recently moved down here from Seattle, and in introducing my wife to the area, I wanted to show her what we have to offer here. But the first thing that she asked me is, show me the downtown. I want to see what the city is like, what it has to offer. I want to get a feeling for what the city is. I want to emphasize to you all that the downtown, Eugene's downtown core is his first opportunity to make a lasting impression to residents and visitors to the area, and to get a sense of what this wonderful town has to offer. So I am in support of these ordinances, and I wanted to say that these will help to create an impression on others of this town. They'll help ensure that the downtown is welcoming and a healthy environment that we all can be proud of. They'll help prevent waste and trash accumulation on our streets, and they'll enhance the perception of downtown as a vibrant, welcoming city that it can be. These ordinances will not solve all of the problems that downtown has, but I encourage this council to make continuous efforts to address all those issues, including lack of funding for law enforcement and for mental health services. But these ordinances are a step in the right direction, and I encourage you all to support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Richter, followed by Tom Dunn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Many of us here today, oh, by the way, Megan Richter, Ward 3. Thank you for having us. Many of us are here today because we still have hope and energy to improve our community so that it may be safe, inviting, healthy, and prosperous. Thank you for hearing out the stakeholders that are here today who have gotten to know some sister cities and are meeting with and learning new ideas and being innovative for long-term approaches to our community. It's come to my attention tonight that we have had some of these conversations for many years, that we've discussed some of these issues often, so I know that none of them are new to you and that you love Eugene too. However, I think it's important to consider that this year is different, and each year we are in a different place of opportunity with new residents, businesses, and ideas. This may be our year. There's so much committed energy in this room right now, and this conversation specific to downtown shows a big picture approach in our neighborhoods because downtown is the heart of our entire city. This is a start that we can make today. When we come together for this neighborhood, we come together for them all. And when we start to take action, we show that we can unite for our entire community. These efforts, especially the dog ordinance, are worth a try. And while this recipe could improve our living room, it may not remodel our entire house. And I think that that's okay to take one step at a time. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Dunn, followed by Tasha Briquette.
Tom Dunn. I'm in Emily Semple's ward. I'll tell you what my experience has been. I don't drive, so I ride, bike, or walk. I have more experience, I think, than most people on the bus and walking around downtown. I'm not afraid to come home on a late bus. So that relates to LTD station, a very safe place. Probably I consider the safest place in downtown. One of the reasons, okay, they have some security, but they're not there all the time. They go back and forth. It's just a mood has been created. And you don't see people spitting on the sidewalks there. You don't see people smoking cigarettes. I've seen one, and he was such a drugged out person, I could see where that was happening. But they're right downtown. Across the street is the library. Across the street is the atrium building with the planning people in it. And on the other corner is the college, Lane Community College. So that's a major center. But if you want to talk about enforcement anywhere, law enforcement goes to the area where the most needed. Now, if you talk about smoking, talk about all the underage teenagers that hang out right on the perimeter of the bus station, across the street in the atrium, where down below is the sleeping center. And I know that, it's a big problem, but you've got to go after the biggest part first.
Thank you. Tasha Briquette, followed by Wilgan Brown.
I'd like to remain on the speaker's list for the smoking ban, but I'd like to yield the rest of my time for this to Jason Kronk, who works in the downtown area and is affected by it and couldn't get on the speaker's list.
I've worked downtown for 15 years. I first opened the Horsehead as a bouncer, and I've worked there a really long time. When you say a dog ban, it's almost physically impossible to uphold. You can't ask someone if it's a therapy dog. You can't tell them they can't bring their dog downtown if they say it's a therapy dog. I know this because I've almost been arrested because of it. You can't tell people they can't have their dog. I don't want your dog downtown, but I know you can't tell them they can't have it. It is their dog. If they say it's a therapy animal, there is no governing body for therapy animals. They can give you a little card. You can buy that online for $2. There's no law that says it's not a therapy dog if you say it's a therapy dog. And there's no way you can stop it. So it is asinine to make a law about it.
Wilgan Brown, followed by Toby Ritchie.
Hello, Eugene Council. My name is Wilgan S. Brown. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, he, him, his, and I am in Ward 5. I would like to impart some clearly needed knowledge upon you. Oregon is the second worst state in providing shelter for people without homes, despite us being #1 in the nation with foreclosed homes. In 2015, we had almost 4,000 individuals without homes in Multnomah County alone. Imagine the numbers we'd see if we expanded our search bubble. Instead of taking such a pointed and short-sighted tactic as the smoking and dog bans, we should instead be using the expanse of resources we have to provide safe, homeless shelters that don't stay closed till it's freezing outside. Rather than looking at our fellow people and telling them that they are less than you or I, we should instead be thinking and planning critically. Rolling over a whiff of smoke outside of your air-conditioned offices or seeing a panting dog on your sidewalk will soon become an even tinier problem than it is now. We just need to pull our problem-solving skills and have a bit of heart when doing so. Remember, we are first in place for wasting our expanse of empty homes, second to last in caring for others. Don't take one incident and criminalize and demonize an entire group of people, as we have so often done in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Do this, please. Quiet. Toby Ritchie, followed by Sarah Bennett.
Hi, my name's Toby Ritchie, and I live in Ward 5 in Mike Clark's ward. I also wanted to share that what Megan Richter shared, I also really supported what she said. And, You know, I don't live downtown, but technically I do because I work downtown and I'm there most of the week. And really what I'm asking for is a place that's safe, comfortable, clean, and that we can manage and create an environment that we can all live in. We work down there, we support that, you know, it's the core of our city. And just like the gentleman shared earlier, it's the place that gives us our identity. It's the heart of our city. You know, I support implementing some sort of action, whether it's an ordinance like this that helps to cultivate streets that we can walk down and that we can enjoy and that we feel safe. Currently, we really do need to reclaim our downtown. It's really in a grave situation in terms of how you feel when you walk down the street and what you have to avoid, from, you know, dog poop to throw up to, you know, whatever's happening, someone laying on the street, someone chasing you into your building. I really believe that we have such an amazing place that we live in, and we need to support a downtown that cultivates an environment that we feel safe in, that we can enjoy, live in, and have our families come down to where we work and live. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah Bennett, followed by Susan Costa.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bennett, Ward 5. The first thing I wanted to say is that, you know, there was some pretty harsh criticism earlier of the police department. I thought that was extremely unfair. The EPD is doing a wonderful job with the resources that they have in a really compassionate way with a lot of integrity. So I appreciate what they're doing. I want to go on the record to say that DEI and the building owners support both the dog and the smoking ordinance. Mike asked earlier, how do you enforce it? One way to enforce it, even though you may not have the resources on the security side, is that it empowers individuals. People have a certain amount of confidence if they know that there's a rule in place and they feel like they can say something to someone breaking that rule. It's up to the council to set appropriate expectations for reasonable behavior downtown. So I hope you'll recognize the many good people who have spent so much time working on the public safety issue and support these two ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Costa, followed by Lonnie Douglas.
Hi, my name is Susan Costa. I am in Ward 5. I own a store in downtown Eugene, and I own a dog. I hope that all of you read the commentary in the paper yesterday by Jack Tripp, the executive director of the Eugene Mission. He calls the situation in downtown Eugene, quote, an absolute disgrace that would not be tolerated in other cities. And many, many of us feel that same way. Our downtown should be a place for people to live, work, shop, eat, and play. It needs to be safe, it needs to be clean, it needs to be pleasant for the citizens of Eugene. A police officer recently told me that when the city implemented the dog ban in the U District, safety improved dramatically. I'm all for more law enforcement and more social services for people in need, but this would be fast and easy to do. Because of that, I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
And I'm leaving this if anyone wants to read it.
Lonnie Douglas, followed by Wanda de Jesus.
Hello, my name is Lonnie Douglas. I'm with ESSN, Eugene Springfield Solidarity Network, Jobs with Justice. Yeah, we need, it is a disgrace downtown. We do need safe, clean places for our citizens, Eugene, and our homeless people, our citizens. We need to not forget that. Also, what the gentleman brought up about service dogs, ESSN has allotted money and will help any homeless person who needs to get their dog designated as a service dog, as a mental health dog. We will apply money toward that. We will help them to register with the National Registry. This is criminalization of the homeless. That's what it is, plain and simple. What you need to do is focus on much more constructive ways of fixing this. Do I know what all those are? No, but we do need homeless shelters. We need places for people to bathe, places for people to do their laundry, places for people to urinate and defecate so that they're not doing it in neighborhoods like Whitaker. Our law enforcement shouldn't have to be running around as dog catchers. They should be dealing with the drug problems and the actual crimes that we have. So I thank you for your time, and y'all have a nice evening.
Thank you. Wanda De Jesus? Oh, you pass? Okay. Maria Bybee? Nope, she's gone. Oh, there she is.
I'm from Emily Semple's ward. My name is Maria Bybee, and I'm asking you to please don't pass this ordinance or any others that criminalize homelessness and add to the epidemic of jailing the mentally ill. Homeless people with their dogs will be expelled from this particular area as they have nowhere to put their dogs, and anywhere they can't go, their dogs can't go, they can't go. I think these policies are especially troublesome because they were created to target a specific group of people. And yes, those people can use streets a few blocks away, but that sounds a lot like separate but equal to me.
Thank you. Caitlin Bowman, followed by Betty Snowden.
My name is Caitlin Bowman, and I am a resident of Ward 7. I walk downtown every day on my way to work, and I am here to oppose the proposed ordinances that are thinly veiled attacks on the unhoused in our community. Banning dogs downtown will endanger already marginalized people and fail to make downtown safer. Please work on real solutions to issues of homelessness in Eugene. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty Snowden, followed by Jack Dresser.
Betty Snowden, you have to go through all of that again, Eugene. We have been downtown and doing business for over 20 years. I don't think the dog ban and the smoking ban is the answer. I think the city council needs to realize who and what we are really dealing with. I think a lot of things you're putting on the homeless, because we watch it, we see it, it is not always the homeless people. We have criminals, we have would-be gangs. Those people are doing a lot of things downtown, and you're allowing them to get away with it. That is the problem that we're having. And so we need jail beds. People need to be prosecuted, and once you start doing that, you'll start cleaning up. You can build a center, you can do this, you can do that, but 20 years from now, we're going to be talking about the same thing because you're not getting to the root of the problem, and the root of the problem is criminal activity. The police do a good job with what they have, but they need more funding, and we need to start prosecuting criminals and leave other people alone.
Thank you. Jack Dresser, followed by Zondi Zink.
Hi, Jack Dresser. I live out in the country, but I work in the city. I'm a psychologist, and I think these proposals to pass ordinances and bans and laws are really very counterproductive. In this case, it's obviously discriminatory against a certain class of people. It's also probably unenforceable, has been pointed out. But, it's unconscionable to interfere in a love relationship, which is the essential relationship between any human being and their dog. This is a love relationship. And in the case of the homeless, it may be the last thing they have, the last thing of profound value in their life. So don't mess with it. There's many ways of solving problems other than passing laws and bans and ordinances. It's called communication. I have not heard one single person testifying here who said they were homeless and owned a dog. You talk to people, these things can be worked out. There's many ways of doing it. So I advise you to give up the ordinance nonsense and start looking at some human-to-human ways of solving this.
Thank you. Zondi Zink, followed by Sophie Bybee. Zondi? No? Sophie Bybee?
Here you go.
my name's Sophie. I live in Emily Semple's ward. I walk downtown every day. I ride my bike to get to school through there. And I'm here to ask the City Council to please vote against the dog and smoking ordinances. I personally really like dogs and think the downtown would be a lot worse without them. I also think that we cannot make laws that criminalize people for simply being unhoused. We talk about how to enforce these laws. I think another question is how we would enforce them fairly. It's not fair to allow people who have a home downtown in a building to have dogs, and to have people who have no home, nowhere to go, they are not allowed to have dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Toby Johnston, followed by Nicole Desch.
Evening. I'm opposed to the dog ban. I believe that holding people accountable for criminality is what upholds the laws that we all need, but inventing ordinances and petty infractions is ultimately criminalizing homelessness in this sense. It is nothing more than a poverty tax, a fine imposed without no expectation that the individual has the means to pay it. It is unfair and wrong. I believe this is a problem. I believe that we all understand that it is a problem. I think creative solutions can be an answer, and part of the camps and the programs that we're working with in regards to homelessness seems like phase one. I think a phase two is sorely needed. Phase two that incorporates local government, local services, the state employment office, vocational rehabilitation, drug treatment, moving people from this thing that we've built that I think is positive. I think Councilor Polling says that we're seeing something good about these camps, and then helping people transition into a more substantial lifestyle, more stable housing is really important. I do not believe that all the jail beds in the world, whether filled or unfilled, will be a solution to this problem. But I do believe working with businesses and individuals and our local nonprofits is a great solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Desch, followed by Mel Height.
Hello, I'm Nicole Desch. I have a business in Ward 1, downtown. I am here in support of both the smoking ban and the dog ordinance downtown. I think that both of these are issues about health and safety in an area with a high density of people, and that they've been proven effective in other places that have similar situations. West University, for example, I went to school at the University of Oregon in 1996 when they passed the dog ordinance there. It was a very effective tool. The smoking ban also, I think, is really important, and Lane County Public Health has done its own research and found that 74% of residents in Lane County believe that smoke-free public spaces is either very important or important to them. And downtown has many public spaces that would benefit from not having smoking and people being subjected to secondhand smoke. I also feel very strongly that none of these ordinances are a silver bullet, and they aren't going to solve all the problems. They're part of a package that's necessary to address the many issues we face downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Mel Height, followed by Barb Prentice. Mel, is Mel still here? Okay. Wait, Mel Height first, and then.
Hi, sweetie. I didn't think you were coming, so go ahead. I was all the way back there. Okay. Hi, I'm Mel Height. So there were many things I wanted to say tonight about the city targeting the houseless community, but instead I'm speaking in hopes that you will understand why this is a poorly thought out ban. If you listened to me the last time I was in the meeting, you heard me share my few experiences with Pebbles, protected the people I camped with, and literally saved my life. So you know why people will not give up their dogs. In the time I had no house, I would often eat at the diner and try to make the little bit of food stamp stretch between Baitu and Kiva, the main meal being the diner. I know it's the same for many out here. When I started working again, I was working during the hours the diner was open, and I couldn't afford to buy food in the school cafeteria. I was too embarrassed to ask my new coworkers because I was hungry or having a hard time focusing from lack of sleep. So some days I would eat what was leftovers that the kids that were camping with me would bring to me from some of the youth services. Many things I've experienced in my life have made me strong and independent, but the struggle to keep going and make it
to the services available to me in my camp were exhausting. There were times I really wanted to give up, but the kids kept me going. Out of the 16 people who camped with us, only one of us is not currently housed, proving that given the right environment and the support, people will move forward. By continuing the criminalization of homelessness and creating new laws to ticket and fine people you already know will not be able to pay, you are creating a greater deficit for the city of Eugene and the people who live here. Stop wasting resources in jail space. Do not ban this. Do not enforce the ban. Just
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Barb Prentice, followed by Donna Riddle.
I'm Barb Prentice. I live in Greg Evans' ward. This ordinance seems to me to be directed solely against the homeless and a mechanism to keep them from our city center. Reminds me of the exclusion zone. I'm not a dog lover, but I have many friends who are. If this ordinance passes, they can leave their dogs at home, safe and warm. If one doesn't have a home, you have no place to leave your pet. For many unhoused people, their dogs are their best friends and protectors. Banning their dogs bans the owners. I also support a safe, inviting, healthy, prosperous downtown. I'm not sure that I was supposed to be given one of these. I also support a downtown that is for all citizens, housed and unhoused. I'd like to see a movement to get licenses for dogs who need them. Pro bono and other groups are certainly willing to help with that. And to see education and positive policing downtown. But a ban is wrong.
Thank you. Donna Riddle, followed by Melanie Phillips.
Donna Riddle. I now live in Springfield because I can't afford to live in Eugene. And I'm speaking in opposition to the dog ordinance. For some people who are unhoused, their dog may be the difference between life and death, protects them from the criminal activities of predators. I don't think the dog ordinance does anything about predators. And I think you're also inviting a lawsuit because you can only say, is it a service dog? What service does it provide? You can't ask the person, what's your disability? They can say whatever they want, and they don't have to register their dog anywhere. They just have to say, it's my service dog, and it's helping me do X, Y, or Z. And believe me, there's going to be little sheets of paper if you do pass the ordinance that tell people what to say. I frequently go downtown, and I know I'm old and ugly, but I have never, even when I was younger, had problems with people might ask me for money, and if I don't give it to them, they're fine. The sexual harassment that I have felt in Eugene was from the Public Works Department.
Thank you. Melanie Phillips, followed by Peter Knox.
Okay. So, let me just pull this up. I'm here to oppose the dog ban and the smoking ban, of course. My name is Melanie Phillips. I am in Simple's district. So I work downtown. I live very close to downtown, right along the edge. I'm pretty much in that area 24/7. I work till late at night. I get there early in the morning. I see all of the effects going on downtown. I see the homeless people. I see the people coming through there for the diners. I see the people coming through there for, the businesses, the people who work there. It's a wide range of people. This will discriminate not just against the people that are homeless, the people who work there. It's a waste of energy and time. there's a small group of people, small groups of individuals that go down there and they sit down there and they harass people and they use their dogs as tools and they do it to intimidate people. And it's literally just a small group of people that are doing this, that are not being, they're not being held accountable. And I think it's a lack of responsibility on the city's part to be going and placing regulations and laws that don't have any way to follow through with those. As far as the law saying that it's comparable to campus,
thank you.
It's completely different. It's going to create a different environment.
Thank you. Peter Knox, followed by Susie Arlupe.
Good evening, councilors and mayor. My name is Peter Knox. I live in Ward 1, and I'm also the chair of the Downtown Neighborhood Association. However, tonight I will be speaking just as a citizen. The dog ordinance that we have in hand, it has a greater impact. The community that I have talked to, the people who don't live downtown, who might be interested in coming to downtown, that if they feel safe, whether or not they do or not, if they say, well, if my dog is not welcome downtown, then I'm not welcome downtown. So even though the perception might be not the reality of how the ordinance will be enforced, this is seen as anti-dog. It's also, as mentioned before, seen as anti-homeless. And that's not what we came here a month ago to talk to you guys about. That we came here a month ago to talk about safety downtown. And that is important to us. If don't make new law, enforce the law that we already have. Thank you.
Thank you. Susie Arlupe, followed by Carolyn Cummings.
My name is Susie Arlupe, and I am a member of Ward 1. And I looked through the City of Eugene ordinances, and I noticed that you already have 62 ordinances about dogs. So all of the things that you're already concerned about, aggression, you already have an ordinance about. If that needs to be reinforced, I suggest looking at what you already have. If you want to make this town a little safer and perhaps a little more hygienic, may I suggest a few items? A, get some posts, as you do in the parks block, with dog poop receptacles. Receptacles? That's a new word. Bags, poop bags in them. Also, continue to have more ashtrays with hand sanitizer on it. It's very important after someone smokes to wash their hands, not only for the smell, but for the germs. Please have public bathrooms where people can go to the bathroom and they can wash their hands. I want hot and cold running water in those bathrooms. Thank you. And another thing I would recommend is a place for people to rest. I know that people are concerned homeless people will sit on those benches. However, as a longtime citizen of this fair city, I and my children have sat on them. I and my aging mother have sat on them. It was very pleasant, even if we had to look at poor people. It just made it nice to be downtown. So again, health and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Cummings, followed by Sean Winter.
Good evening. My name is Caroline Cummings. I'm a Eugene resident. And I want to thank you guys for actually bringing this issue to light and opening comment for this. You've heard me speak here many times about being sexually harassed in the downtown and having people surround me with their dogs. And I've walked out of my office in the downtown several times surrounded by people smoking. And I have a right to fresh air. And I think in our downtown, where we have a density of people, that it's important that everyone feels safe, healthy, invited downtown, and we have a prosperous downtown. And right now, we don't have that. I've heard a lot of people here talk tonight about this being criminalization of homeless. I don't see it that way. I'm extremely compassionate about homeless. I regularly stop and feed homeless teens. That's not what this is about. I feel like there's it's one side or the other, and that's not what this is. The ban for smoking and the dog ordinance, or the dog ban and the smoking ordinance, has been used in other cities. And I've been spending a lot of time reading about what's going on in other cities, in Boulder, in Tucson, in Ashland, and what we've done here in the University District. And crime has reduced. It isn't crime from homeless people. It's just crime, period. And we need to do something about it. And there was a woman who spoke here earlier tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean Winter, followed by Kimberly Gladen.
Hello, my name is Sean Winter. I'm actually down here from Portland. I'm going to be moving to Eugene this summer so my wife can go to school here at the university. And I was excited to bring my manufacturing business from Portland down to Eugene. And these ordinances kind of make me rethink that and rethink about the kind of city that Eugene is and whether or not I want to plant roots here. You talk a lot about making the city welcoming for people, and that you're thinking of passing these ordinances makes me feel that you're not so welcoming. And I hope that you decide to not pass them. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Gladen, followed by Will Orr.
Kimberly Gladen, downtown. First thing I'm going to say, I find it very interesting that the University District can have a similar ordinance for 20 years and nobody says it's discrimination against the homeless. I kind of find that very ironic that they are allowed to discriminate for 20 years, but they call it that for the downtown. Secondly, Friday night I was heading to the grocery store about 6:30 at night. There were a group of travelers with their begging signs and backpacks taking up quite a bit of sidewalk in front of Sizzle Pie with 3 dogs. When I approached them, I tried to give them as wide a berth as I possibly could because there wasn't much room left on the sidewalk. The 3 dogs rushed me, barking and snapping. It was very scary. This is not the first time this has happened. As much as I like dogs and all, I'm tired of walking over dog poop. There are poop collection stations here. It's just people don't use them. They just let their dog poop and keep on walking because they think it's funny. The guys holding the 3 dogs, the group thought it was very funny. Their dogs were barking and snapping at people on the sidewalk there. It made it very uncomfortable for me to go to the store. I don't own a car. I walk everywhere. I don't own a car for global warming reasons, unlike many people who drive cars and pollute the earth. So I'm in favor of the dog ban. By the way, Claire, it was Pete Sorensen who said drug dealing was freedom of speech.
Not the
Wilbur Orr, I'm not sure I'm reading this right. Not all right. Oh, I don't know. Maybe. You
on High Street?
On High Street? Okay, that's you then. Followed by Jennifer McRaven Reddicky.
When I returned to Eugene, I would go to the city library, and I was really impressed to see all these people coming in with their dogs, and it struck me as very unique, people-friendly, and just yesterday I read these 2 editorials that a lot of people read in the Register Guard, and they talked about innovative solutions for shelter, housing, so there's a lot of concerned people here. So there's a lot of compassion energy. I don't know, maybe it's an unrelated topic, but you have this University of Oregon, and they're building all these buildings, and you would think that maybe some of these donors would donate to the U of O, give a building, that there could be some kind of some monetary portion of that going into human needs, instead of building this big building, What else? You know, there's a lot of things coming down the line, and we don't know how it's going to happen. What's going to happen? But we got this guy Donald Trump, and we have this opium epidemic, and you know, that can make people kind of have a commonality between class or political structure because of the grief that it causes. And so go the compassion route. Don't go the low route, Donald Trump route.
Thank you. Jennifer, followed by Emma Olson-Spratt.
I'm Jennifer McRaven. I'm here to voice my strong opposition to this obviously biased proposal, and I'm here to reiterate the statements of my fellow volunteer at ESSN, Lonnie Douglas. Take it under consideration, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma Olson-Spratt. Emma, still in the room? Okay, good. Followed by Brittany Quick-Warner.
Hello, my name is Emma. I live in Springfield currently. I moved there about a year ago. I lived in downtown Eugene before that. I am the owner of and a dog groomer at Murphy's Paw Pet Grooming. I'm here tonight to ask you to please not pass this ban on dogs. In my line of work, I regularly meet people and their dogs that are visiting Eugene. One of the most common questions I get asked is, where is a good place to eat where I can take my dog? You can't really take your dog inside restaurants, so the option is any restaurant with outdoor seating. The majority of those businesses that I like to recommend are in downtown Eugene. My mother works at the new Home 2 hotel. That is a dog-friendly hotel as well. That's an extended stay hotel. That's people that are coming into Eugene for extended periods of time with their dogs and potentially their money to spend on local businesses. So I feel like you would actually potentially be hurting local businesses by passing this ban. I'm immersed in the culture of dogs and dog owners. It's my livelihood, but it's also my passion. I don't know if you know that 44% of Americans have dogs. They consider them their family, myself included. Don't ban family members from downtown.
Thank you. Brittany Quick-Warner, followed by Indy Stetter.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I've been here a lot of times, and my husband would definitely say I'm never usually at a loss of words. But I kind of feel like that right now. I know there's been folks working on this issue for a long time, a lot longer than I have, but I've been pretty deep into this issue for the last 8 months, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've heard from a lot of people here tonight also, and we don't agree. We don't agree on anything. Some people think that it's this problem that we have to fix. Some people think it's this problem that we have to fix, and they directly contradict each other. Some people agree with part of this solution and not with part of this solution. But the reality is, I mean, Tom Camus said it earlier, we've been working on this for a long time. We have to do something. And it might not work. It might not work. I'm here supporting the dog ordinance, and when it comes back around in November, it might not have worked. It might not have made people feel safer downtown, which is what the ordinance was intended to do. And so then we have to try something else. We have short-term solutions we have to work on, and we have long-term solutions we have to work on, and they have to be holistic. They have to work on homelessness, and they have to work on safety, and they have to work on enforcement. They have to work on all of them, but we have to do something. We can't just keep talking in circles, and we need money to do it, so we have to talk about how we're going to get more money too. I feel like I'm at a loss, and I don't envy you for having to make this decision, but we have to make a decision. Thanks.
Thank you. Indy Stetter, followed by Stefan Streck.
Okay, so my name is Indy Stetter, and I've never done this before, and my city's Eugene, and I'm in Ward number 1. And you usually think that because I'm not a voter, I don't care about politics. That's not true. I have beliefs, but I also only admit it. So I don't support this ordinance because if dogs are banned from downtown, the first thing I would ask is why. what good would it do for the businesses downtown, and what are the dogs doing that would cause you to want to ban them from downtown in the first place? Unless they're being abused or trained to be violent, it's not in dogs' nature to be violent. So that's why I think that this is not about the dogs at all, but the people who own the dogs. Most of the dogs in downtown belong to homeless people. So I think that the real goal of banning dogs from downtown is to get a lot of the homeless people who own these dogs out of downtown. And sure, people don't like to see homeless people sitting in the streets, but if you kick them all out, where are they going to go? Thank you.
Thank you. Stefan Streck, followed by Celia Norris.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here again. So I came back from Washington, D.C. after, inaugurating our President Trump. He does his thing. And I come back and I find out that the city council hates dogs. So I'm trying to figure out what is up with that. Because, people are seeing this as criminalization of the homeless. I don't care about most of these 40-year-old heroin-addicted men. They suck. I don't like them. What the problem I see is that this is criminalization of pretty girls who own dogs. I know a lot of really nice, really pretty girls. They have anxiety. They need their dogs. They don't necessarily have notes for them, but this is a big priority because people, there's a lot of pretty girls coming here and they want to be able to have dogs. Their grandparents want to be able to pay for them to live in a place where they can walk their dogs downtown and go to bars and be safe. Dogs help people who are single be safe from being harassed. This is a priority. And there's a lot of money that's going to go into this that people don't see. Besides, pretty girls, there's, homeless people, and they're not all that bad, most of them. My friend, this guy, he was downtown being surrounded. 6 police officers for, like, a guy that, he's got to be 100 pounds. Anyways, I had to pay his fee to get himself a dog license, and now we've got more illegal taxes and legislation from Democrats. I've had enough of it, and there's a lot of voters that have had enough of it, too. And, if it keeps going this way, a lot of more Republicans in office.
Thank you. Celia Norris, followed by Tom Camus.
Don't even say a thing to me. Don't say anything to me.
Hello, I'm Celia Norris. I live in Eugene. So I go to school at University of Oregon. I have a dog that's like my family dog. We got her. She was born the day my sister passed away. And so whenever my mom visits me, she brings our dog. And when my mom visits, we want to go downtown. We want to eat somewhere that has, downtown where we can have the dog. And so this does affect other people as well. I also have traveling friends. They're only here for a week at a time, travel here a lot during the summer. They're not doing anything wrong. They're just traveling through. I think they bring a lot of culture here. As far as doing something for people, there was a taxi I saw that said that it's like dog taxi in Eugene. I was like a high five, which I thought was pretty cool. As far as taking care of the homeless problem, I liked Jill's idea. I think that maybe having an area, it could even bring some culture to Eugene, especially if we put it in a park or something because I would much rather go and see people trying to do something for themselves and listen to what they have to say and let them feel empowered than have them all there just asking me for money. If you let people feel empowered, we're going to have a lot less of a homeless problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Camus, and that's the end. Final for the dog ordinance.
I'm on the cusp, right on. I get dog and smoking. All right. So Ward 1, Emily. So this all started with a librarian's dog being attacked. And I think that's where this little dog was killed because it was doing what it was supposed to, it was protecting its owner against a bunch of dogs that were on the street. It wasn't really the dog issue. Do you guys know what happened that day? There was 12 people on one corner, there were 16 people on another corner, there were 5 people over here. There's just a slew of people downtown that all have dogs. Of course something's going to happen. This is a knee-jerk reaction to something that, I don't know, is this something that later on you can pat yourself on the back and say, hey, we did something, which is also with the smoking ban. Really? I mean, come on, this has been in somebody's love child for the last 3 years because I got a call about it 3 years ago. So I don't really understand what you're trying to do because none of these actually address any of the issues that was $150,000 was spent on. None of those things were on that list. And let's see, $150,000, what is that? That's like 1,700 days that you could have paid for somebody to actually be in jail for that was a criminal. Let's rethink this. And again, this is not a knee-jerk reaction, and this is not some political grandstanding that you guys are taking an issue for and then trying to like build some good momentum around it. Just do something that actually works. Let's bring the Johnson unit back. Let's get a homeless shelter. Let's build a jail.
Johnson unit.
Is it Johnson?
Yeah. Thank you. And that closes that public hearing. Let's see. I need to close this, right? Okay. Okay. We're closed with the dog. Are there comments? No comments. Betty has come. Councilor Taylor.
Thank you. I liked the last comment. I liked a lot of them, but the knee-jerk reaction is just what I think this is. I think that thinking you have to do something and then just doing anything without thinking enough about what it will accomplish is not a good thing. I like the comments about what we need: shelter, place to bathe, a toilet. Dogs are not the problem. If I also a comment that has a newer comment: visitors to the city. We have a new hotel that will allow dogs, I think. Hilton allows dogs too. I stayed there once with my dog. And if people are staying downtown, they need to walk around. If people come visiting, there are restaurants downtown that allow dogs outside. There's a bookstore, at least one, that allows dogs inside. And I think we should look at the behavior, not at whether people have dogs or not. If it's a dog that's misbehaving, it's another matter. If it's not, unlike that, we already have. I didn't realize I think as someone said 62 laws about dogs. If some of those are relevant, let's consider enforcing them instead of. Anytime you pass a new law, you should be sure that that what you're getting at isn't already taken care of in some other law. I have to put my glasses on. I like the quote, don't criminalize something just because of one thing. And people have to be somewhere. The people in Whitaker have a really good point. If you scoot people out of downtown, they're going to go somewhere else. We're not going to get rid of the people. We can look at the behavior, not the people. I know that these things are mostly to get rid of people on the streets, regardless of what people say about them. And there are other things we can do for people. I've seen a lot of emails with good ideas. Talk to people, spend the money some other way instead of getting rid of dogs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Syrett?
Thank you. I'm going to save most of my discussion for when we have a work session on this, but I really, really appreciate the comments from everybody on both sides, all sides of the issue. This is why we have a public forum, a public hearing on these kinds of things. I have not made a decision one way or the other on where I stand on this ban, and so I will continue to consider all the input I received tonight from all of you and the emails that we're getting. It's very helpful, very insightful, and appreciate the creative thinking that folks bring to these discussions. Just a couple of quick fact checks. Pete Sorensen isn't the sheriff. He's an elected official, so he doesn't get to decide necessarily what the law is in terms of enforcement. And the Johnson unit still exists. It's run by Sacred Heart, a private nonprofit hospital. It's now called the Behavioral Health Unit, so it hasn't gone away. They did reconstruction there. We still have a Johnson unit in town. Thank you.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to say I appreciated those who tended to agree with me. I appreciated Sarah Bennett, who, although didn't agree with me, was able to address the question that I asked, which was, how do we enforce something when we have so many laws, as someone mentioned, 62 already, just about dogs, that we don't really enforce right now? And that's not the fault of the police officers. They do a fantastic job. It's that, in my opinion, the council hasn't given them the support system necessary to do a good job with enforcement of the rules that exist. I hope we'll do that differently. City Attorney, under the way this language is currently construed, why wouldn't a homeless person, and I'm going to use that word in the common sense, I guess, be at home wherever they were?
The code provision is written to state, and it's the same as what is currently in the university area. So that is the identical language that has the dog prohibition around the university, and it uses the phrase lawful residence.
Lawful resident?
Lawful residence.
Wow.
What the hell does that mean?
The definition of that?
I'm sure there's definition of that in state code, probably, if not in ordinance. Tell me just your opinion. Yes, it says that already around what's done at the university. Two things. Number one, if somebody wanted to fight that in court, you think that one holds up?
Yes.
Why?
It's like a law school exam.
I know. Isn't that awesome?
Why does it hold up?
Yeah, because it seems like an equal application of the law to me too. I don't understand.
It is. This is not. It is not content based. It's not discriminatory on its face in any way. It prohibits
I can have a
everyone,
dog if I have a house. If I don't, I can't.
If you live within a boundary,
Mm-hmm.
it's not. If you have a house, you're fine, and you don't have a house, you're not fine. If you reside within this boundary, you may have your dog. That is what the ordinance says. And yes, I think that would hold up in a court.
Secondly, and thank you. Secondly, commentary on the service animal comment that the gentleman made.
Mm-hmm.
He's right. He's wrong.
So our code currently defines, well, a number of different people spoke about service animals, so I'll just generally speak to this and say the code currently provides a definition of service animal to the point of can you ask somebody what their disability is? The person that spoke about that and said that cannot be asked, that is correct. The definition of service animal states that it needs to be trained to perform a task for the benefit of an individual with a disability. It discusses that, and a person can be asked what the dog does, what task that dog does. And then the definition explicitly excludes animals that provide emotional support, well-being, comfort, or companionship. Those don't constitute tasks. So we have a very long definition that you as a council amended about 5 years ago to make sure it was consistent with the ADA. Did that answer your question?
It was in the neighborhood, I guess. So there's a long list of things that one might qualify for as a service. I don't need you to read it. I'm just saying that I heard you correctly.
Yes, there is a long list. I mean, and also under the ADA, it can be a miniature horse. It doesn't have to be a dog.
Be a goat.
Just going to throw that out there. It cannot be a goat under the ADA. It can be a miniature horse or a dog. But it says examples of work. I mean, the code provision provides a very detailed, if you look in your code, it's one of the longest definitions you're going to get because it matters. The ADA is providing
And we expect our officers to know all of them, right?
And they do a wonderful job.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I have a beloved dog, and no one on the council hates dogs. I know that for a fact, and six of us are dog owners.
I ain't crazy about
my neighbor's cat bit me, not my dog. How did they enforce the law on the campus area? It's been there since 1996, which is over 20 years. It seems to work okay. And how do they enforce that there? There's a lot of conversation about it's unenforceable, but they enforce it there. So how does that work? Chief's here.
I can't speak to that.
There's the campus police that does it.
It's EPD that does it. It's not campus police. It wasn't campus police until.
Well, thank you for inviting me up to the table. Yeah, Officer Ellis, who's a pretty respected foot patrol officer, worked in the West University neighborhood for a long time, and he considered the ordinance in that area to have been extremely effective at dealing with the problem of having a large number of dogs in an area where there's a high concentration of pedestrians. So it wasn't a matter of trying to remove people from the neighborhood. It was a matter of recognizing that these two populations just aren't compatible, the high number of dogs and the large number of pedestrians. And so it was just a matter of having conversations. I don't know that he ever actually had to issue a citation for violations, but he spoke with people about where they lived and about their dogs and told them that they were forbidden to be there on those blocks, and he found it to be extremely effective.
Yeah, and he's missed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Catherine, I'm actually, I don't want to put you through too much tonight, but I'm actually going to ask you as the city attorney to read that definition, even though it's a little bit lengthy, because it's important that people understand there's a definition of it. It's not just service dogs. Okay, that's fine.
Certainly, absolutely. Any dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability, including a physical, sensory, psychiatric, intellectual, or mental disability, consistent with federal rules implementing the Americans with Disability Act, a miniature horse that has been individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of the individual with the disability may also be considered a service animal. The work or task performed by a service animal must be directly related to the handler's disability. Examples of work or tasks include, but are not limited to, assisting individuals who are vision impaired with navigation or other tasks, alerting individuals who are hearing impaired to the presence of people or sounds, providing nonviolent protection or rescue work, pulling a wheelchair, assisting an individual during a seizure, alerting individuals to the presence of allergens, retrieving items such as medicine or the telephone, providing physical support and assistance with balance and stability to individuals with mobility disabilities, and helping persons with psychiatric and neurological disabilities by preventing or interrupting impulsive or destructive behaviors. The crime deterrent effects of an animal's presence and the provision of emotional support, well-being, comfort, or companionship do not constitute work or task for the purposes of this definition.
Thank you. That is one of the longest definitions we've had. The home to hotel is dog friendly, and it seems to be within the zone. Would that be go back to it? Would that be a legal residence of someone who's staying there?
Yes.
So that would be the exemption that they're legally residing there at least for the night.
Yes.
So their dog would be allowed in the downtown. And then this is also set up to be a pilot, so that it sunsets on November 1st.
Correct.
So that's 6 months. 8 months. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Semple.
I really, really appreciate everybody coming tonight and also the emails we've been getting. I'm really impressed by how thoughtful people have in really considering this. I want to make it clear that I understand that it's scary and doesn't feel safe downtown for many of us. But I've thought about this a lot, and I think it will hurt people. And so we still have a week to think about this, but I'm not in support of it. I do have one question about residing in the boundary. If I manage to sleep every night within the boundary, do I reside there?
The ordinance doesn't state residing. It is that you have a lawful residence within the boundary.
So since it's illegal to sleep, I can't have a residence if I don't have a building. How do you define residence?
It's on the state law.
it would, if somebody was, for example, sleeping in a park, that would not be a lawful resident, and the park blocks is within the boundary, that would not be considered a lawful residence, simply because they chose to spend the night there.
So unless you have access to a building, you don't have legal residence.
Unless, for example, there was a rest stop set up within the downtown core boundary. That would be a legally permissible place to be. So does it have to have a physical structure? No, it has to be a legally permissible residence. So if you had within the downtown core or permitted overnight sleeping due to a dusk to dawn ordinance or a rest stop ordinance, that too could be considered a lawful residence because it is lawfully being allowed.
Thank you. I think that seems really, really unfair. I'm kind of surprised nobody's brought a suit about it. Anyway, thank you everybody for sharing your opinions. That's what makes a government work.
Any other councilor comments? Okay, I think again, thank you all for sharing your comments. It does have, it influences us. We're listening to you, so thanks so much. And now we're ready for the next public hearing on the smoking ban. So, City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll just make this brief. This public hearing is an opportunity for the public to provide feedback on a proposed ordinance to expand smoke-free areas in the downtown. The purpose of the ordinance is to promote community health and create a more welcoming and accessible downtown core by reducing the impacts of secondhand smoke and cigarette litter.
Excuse me now.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to count. Okay, so just same rules apply. I think you were all here, so we'll just begin. You have a minute and a half. I have a big pile. First up, Ashley Delph Weimer, followed by Todd Kaiser.
Hello, my name is Ashley Delp-Weimer, and I live in Springfield, but I have grown up in Eugene. I'm here to speak in support of the proposed ordinance for a cleaner, safer, and healthier downtown Eugene, specifically the ban on smoking in public places. I am a registered respiratory therapist and certified asthma educator. I could choose to speak to you from this perspective and discuss the infinite number of negative outcomes I have seen among both children and adults when it comes to even casual association with cigarette smoke, including second and third-hand smoke. However, I will appeal to you as a patient, as someone who has struggled with severe, uncontrolled, intrinsic and extrinsic asthma for over 30 years, as someone who has many family members who struggle with the same ailment everywhere from intermittent to severe. We all have one trigger in common: cigarette smoke. Many businesses have taken it upon themselves to ensure that a sign is displayed stating no smoking within 25 to 30 feet of the entrance. However, to get to the entrance of most of these businesses, you still have to walk through the cloud of smoke that encompasses downtown Eugene. As a child, I remember not being able to go into restaurants, even with no smoking sections. This is because smoke does not recognize designated stopping points. It does not see a wall where it isn't supposed to be and stop from going into the designated area free of toxin. Smoke carries, it drifts, and for someone like me, one casual encounter can lead to a day hooked up to a breathing machine. For someone like my niece and nephew, it can mean a long, sleepless night full of medication, and for my mother, it's likely the hospital.
Thank you. Next up, Todd Kaiser, followed by Matt Laubach.
Hello, my name is Todd Kaiser, and I'm in George Polling's ward, Ward 4. I'm here to speak against the smoking ordinance and for the dog ordinance for that matter. But I guess I'll take a slightly different tact than what we've heard so far. A couple of years ago, there's been some good changes in the policies of the Eugene Police Department against biased policing. And I'm reading directly from policy 402.2 that says the Eugene police employees are forbidden to engage in profiling or bias-based policing practices. I don't see any difference between that and these two policies. Both of these policies have exemptions based on ability that you have funds. These policies are biased against people who are poor or homeless, and it's pretty obvious. There's no really other way of looking at it. If it was a smoking ordinance that said no smoking with no exemptions, I'd probably be behind you. I'm a non-smoker. I hate smoke. I feel for the people with asthma, and I would support that 100%. But that's not what we have today. What you have is a policy with exemptions for people who spend money downtown. That is a biased policy. That is a shameful policy. It is so obvious what's going on. We should be embarrassed. The idea that you would potentially give tickets, and I'm glad to hear that there's been no tickets in the university area, but if you would give tickets to people for this, it's just shameful.
Thank you. Matt Laubach, followed by Colby Carpenter. Oh.
Hi, I'm Matt Laubach. I live in Betty Taylor's ward. I'm speaking in favor of the smoking ban for health reasons. I was overjoyed when you banned smoking in the park blocks. I agree with the Honorable Councilor Greg Evans about banning smoking for the rest of the downtown blocks. I've lived here in Eugene for 27 and a half years, and I resent coming downtown where I know my health will be assaulted with cigarette smoke. I can't go anywhere downtown without breathing it. LCC, the bus station, library, the Atrium Building, Kesey Square, Olive Street, and across 7th Street from Willamette, from the Holt Center, are particularly polluted from mostly bars with smoking areas to the street, which I think should not be exempted from the smoking ordinance. Now, I have a lot of compassion for homeless people, and I don't assume that they all smoke. As a matter of fact, I think the connection between smoking and homelessness in this argument is a ruse. And so please designate one area downtown for people to smoke where I know to avoid. I respect people's so-called right to smoke as long as I don't have to breathe it and get cancer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor, I just want to point out it's 10 o'clock and our operating agreements say we will close at 10 o'clock. I'm planning to go on and allow people to testify. Do I need to get confirmation from council to do that? Or
There's 42 people.
There's 42 people. We've heard from 2 so far. So we're looking at another hour.
You can skip if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
We need a motion.
Without objection, I think we're going to proceed because people have been waiting this long and I don't want to disappoint you. I want you to give you a chance. And we need to hear what you have to say. So on with Colby Carpenter, followed by Tasha Briquette.
Good evening, Mayor Venice, Council, City Manager Reese. Thank you for continuing with the testimonies. My name is Colby Carpenter, and I'm a resident in Mr. Clark's district. I'm here tonight to urge City Council to implement the proposed smoking ordinance in downtown Eugene area to improve the safety, health, and livability of downtown Eugene for all residents. Although this ordinance will not solve all the obstacles in front of downtown Eugene and Eugene as a whole, as many people have said earlier, it is a fundamental part of a long-term plan. It's one crucial component of a cornucopia of short-term and long-term proposals that will continue to make Eugene a happier, healthier, and safer environment for all people. The smoking ordinance you're considering tonight will have a dramatic influence on downtown Eugene's public image as well. Residents have a negative perception of smoking in downtown, and that often deters people from visiting the downtown area. Personally, I have to think twice before taking my 13-year-old sister downtown out of respect of her health and mine. My experience with secondhand smoke in downtown is not unique, unfortunately. Someone had mentioned earlier tonight as well, 74% of Lane County residents believe that it is important to be protected from secondhand smoke in public spaces. As such, many of these people avoid downtown due to the perception that there is an uncomfortable amount of smoke in the compact downtown area. Implementing this smoking ordinance will also help people who work, learn, and live downtown. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Tasha Briquette, followed by Tom Dunn.
Hi there, my name is Tasha Burkay. I live in Ward 5. I actually have a pretty severe sensitivity to cigarette smoke. I get extreme lung pain. It's really hard for me to breathe. I have respiratory issues for days after. But regardless, I still don't support your ban because I don't support having clean air on the backs of, essentially stepping on the backs of homeless people and business owners and local businesses and hurting their profits in doing so. The exclusions make it obvious there's an attack on homeless folks. And if your cornucopia is just not seeing poor people that live on the streets and making them go somewhere else, then I don't want to see that cornucopia. It just displaces people. It doesn't fix the problem. And I think we should focus on solutions that actually affect homelessness at its root. We should have shelters. We should continue those rest stop programs. We should stop criminalizing homeless people for being homeless. Essentially, this seems like a Band-Aid to a gunshot wound, and I honestly don't think that's a smart implementation for this city, and I hope you're all smart enough to realize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Dunn, followed by Wilgan Brown.
It's going to be hard to keep dogs from smoking, but they are related. I want to say again, one of the safest places in the city, and I think especially older people like me don't look at it, is the bus station. And the people have got very respectful there. Over the years, 5 years for sure, I've only seen one time where there's two angry guys and one guy's trying to pick a fight. And I am there at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. So I can't see a problem. Again, I don't see all the connections between smoking and homelessness as far as what I said about go to core places. You already have the bus station, and they charge more for our rides so they can provide security. And I think that was a wise thing. And you can do the same thing if you want. Concentrate your resources in a small area, perhaps work out. Go from there. Thank you. I appreciate you having this meeting.
Thank you. Wilgan Brown, followed by Wanda De Jesus.
There's someone who can speak on this issue much more than I can, so I would like to keep my time on the speakers list, but have Jason Kronk speak in my stead.
I can't add a speaker tonight, so you can either take your turn or he can have your turn, but I'm not adding a speaker. Okay.
For my turn.
Okay.
I have no idea what ward I live in, but that's okay because you guys are all my city council. Like I said, I've worked downtown since we opened downtown. When I first started downtown, there was nothing. There was Lazar and Lazar and Lazar's kid, and that was it. The city had tried time and time again to build downtown, and they didn't do it. We did. The bars did. All these people who put their money downtown did it by ourselves. And now you're threatening to take away all of their money. Just because you don't like smoke. I don't smoke. I've never smoked. I don't go hang out on the smoking deck. It's a great big goddamn world out there. There's not that much smoke. I understand some people get really sick from it. But what you're trying to do is in businesses that have worked their butts off to make it downtown. We made downtown. You should let us keep it.
Thank you. Wanda, followed by June Simon.
My name is Wanda de Jesus. I live in the Whitaker neighborhood. I've been affected by smoke for many years, and I would love to see the city with a section that we don't have smoke. But I understand there's a lot of business, and I frequent a lot that people smoke outside. My problem is that if we have an area that everybody could go smoke and then come back to where they are entertaining themselves. I'm an entertainer myself. I play harmonica with a band. And I sometimes had to cross through a big cloud of smoke because everybody goes in front of the establishments. If we have an area where we consider a block or something like that where people could go smoke, it might work. It might work for all of us. It might work for the whole city that I love. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. June Simon. June, yes. followed by Lonnie Douglas.
Thank you. My name is June Simon, and I'm in Emily's ward. I have a few things to say, but one thing that I don't understand is if you have a dog ordinance, but you give some exception to people who live downtown with their dogs, but you have people who live downtown and they don't get any exception. So if I live downtown, where do I have to walk outside of the downtown area? Anyway, this topic has surfaced again. Last time it came up, I did a little bit of research. I couldn't find any definitive information that outdoor secondhand smoke in the outdoors is harmful. And again, since the issue is raised again, I looked again. Very interestingly, the only places that some new research studies have talked about outdoor patios and bars and the concentration of smoke in them that is showing up to be a problem. But I'm going to fall back on an interview I heard on NPR.
Thank you. You can always submit testimony in writing. Think you.
I will. Thank you.
Lonnie Douglas, followed by Jason Gronk. I don't know. Jason.
Looks like Lonnie left.
I already spoke. We're good.
Okay, great. Lonnie, did we get Lonnie?
He's not here.
Okay, so we're skipping. Kyle Pierce. You're not here either. Jeffrey Keim, followed by Jason Buckley.
That's a bingo.
Hello, my name's Jeff Keim. I live in Eugene, and I work in downtown Eugene. Frankly, I don't understand why we're even here right now having this discussion. The people of Eugene said they didn't feel safe downtown. They asked you to do something about that on a public safety level. They asked you to do something about crime, violent crime, felony crime, things that are occurring downtown on a daily basis. I just don't understand what a smoking ban or a dog ban that has nothing to do with the issue. We asked you for one thing, and you come out of left field with something totally unrelated. What's wrong with you guys? I mean, seriously, why are we even having this conversation? It doesn't have anything to do with the issue. You wasted $187,000 on a study about downtown, and they didn't mention smoking your dogs once. It's not your job to legislate morality. You're going to put me out of business. We're all going to lose our jobs downtown if you pass this ban. Don't do it, please. Think about what you're doing. It's mismanagement. It's bad, bad government. People wonder how Trump got elected. It's by doing stuff like this.
Thank you. Brett Cross. Wait, did I skip? Oh, we say Jason Buckley, sorry, followed by Brett Cross.
Hello, I'm Jason Buckley. I believe I live in Emily Simple's ward, Ward 1. Yeah, pretty much what Jeff Keim just said is pretty much how I feel about the whole thing, too. Mismanaged money. Studies that don't show anything. People here, I'm sorry if they have like respiratory ailments, but this is the Willamette Valley, also known as the Valley of Sickness and Death, where pollen and all sorts of stuff sit here, especially over the summer. You look at a pollen map every year. Where's the big red dot? Right over this valley. So I can't get behind like you guys banning cigarettes or banning dogs is going to solve a problem. Like Jeff said, it's going to put a lot of people out of work. I even could give some more admission beds because some of us are going to need it. I think the motto of this town should be the town of ridiculous ordinances and frivolous spending. Thank you.
Thank you, I think. Brett Cross, followed by Paul Snyder.
Hello, Brett Cross, Semple's Ward. I'm here to oppose the ban on smoking. But primarily I'm here to stand up for the livelihood of the workers in the downtown area. Every worker is afforded a legal break from their job, and those that do smoke, they will need to go outside of the city area just to have a cigarette. And I understand that it is detrimental to other people's health, but when we look at it, when it comes to the amount of pollutants that a cigarette can provide versus the cars that are constantly up and down, I think on a grander scale, I think the financial hurt that the workers will feel is really what we need to focus on. I have a mortgage I pay, and I rely on smokers to pay my bills. And I feel I may lose my home. And that's about where I'm at right now with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Snyder, followed by Peter Knox.
My name is Paul Snyder. I live and work in the Whitaker, but I like to shop and play downtown. I like to talk about what I think we all should recognize is the issue at hand. There's another issue of the haves. You can tell by the way they dress, that those who've spoken here, trying once again to kick the have-nots who are already down on the ground. They don't want to see little stains and bruises on people. Meanwhile, they're happy to have me have stains on my clothes and bruises on my body to make their fancy food and make their fancy drink. In closing, I'd just like to say I'd rather have fun in their hell than be poor and oppressed in a heaven that's only for them.
Peter Knox, followed by Jamesh Dosher. James. Oh, sorry, James, got it.
Good evening again, Mayor and councilors. My name is Peter Knox. I'm the chair of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, and once again, I am speaking on my own behalf as a citizen. I'm not a smoker. I really don't like smoke. It's awful. So from a comfort standpoint, yeah, I could see this whole thing, but you know what? I am against the smoking ban ordinance because I think it is government reaching a little too far. Now I know there's maybe some health concerns. I'm not sure I quite buy the secondhand smoke argument in outdoors, but you're taking science that may or may not be that's inconclusive and trying to make legislation that is going to affect the ability for a group of people to have freedom. And yes, their freedom to smoke is maybe a little disgusting to people, but it's their freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. James Dosher, followed by Jack Dresser.
My name is James Dosher. I oppose that smoking ban because I go out with my friends at the bar and smoke. That is our civil rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack Dresser, followed by Zondi Zink.
Okay, well, I'm back again. I'm not only a psychologist, but I'm a retired Oregon Research Institute scientist. And I happen to have done the economic impact study on the Corvallis ban of smoking in bars some years ago. And that led to my testifying before your predecessors on the city council that led to the banning in Eugene of smoking in bars. It eventually led to the statewide ban on smoking in bars. So now people who drink, people who smoke tend to do so when they're drinking. And not only employees, but customers of bars not only can't smoke in the bars, but with your ordinance, they couldn't smoke outside the bars either. So where are they going to go? It would obviously hurt the businesses here. And as far as I know, all the research on secondhand health effects of secondhand smoke were done on people in indoor environments. I'm not aware of any research that indicates public health problems resulting from smoke in outdoor environments. So what I haven't kept up with all the research on this, but I would recommend that you contact some of the world-class research scientists in tobacco research at Oregon Research Institute and have them testify to you.
Thank you. Zondi Zink. How about Ember Ophelia Woody? How about Mary Adams?
Wait.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. Ember.
Hello there. I live in the Whitaker and Eugene for 22 years now, and I am kind of a begrudged regular downtown because I do things down there for work. And I understand the dislike of secondhand cigarette smoke, and I really feel for people with asthma. She's not back there now, but that kind of made me pause for a minute. The thing is, though, is that the establishments that will be affected the most are the ones that have been there the longest. And they've held down that fort of Eugene downtown for a long time. And through all the thick and thin, they've been there for a long time. And I feel like they're in places that people could easily avoid to get to where they want to go if they really don't like that smoke. I understand. And the petition that's going around clearly states that this is an element towards trying to clean up downtown from the homeless youth. And so to say it's just a health concern is kind of a farce. I think this kind of ban works really well at universities, community colleges, and living situations like condos and apartments. But to do it in an area that caters to 21-plus entertainment and establishments, it just seems excessive and really unnecessary. And a lot of people that I know would lose their jobs. And in this current political climate, we have no idea where we're headed. And to tamper with people's jobs, asking the EPD to do more than they already do, just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Mary Adams. Mary. Tamara Miller. Tamara Miller. Followed by Melanie Phillips.
Good evening, Tamara Miller. I live in Mike Clark's Ward 5, and I'm here today to speak in support of the downtown smoking ordinance. I know that you know that smoking is the leading preventable cause of death in Lane County. I commend you for your work that you have done in this area so far with smoke-free parks and other ordinances, and you were very brave in doing that. You passed that ordinance before Lane County did, and they struggled with that. I also know that smoking and tobacco use costs the county and the residents of Lane County a tremendous amount of money every year in related medical costs. I know this seems to some people like this is about homelessness, and I hope that that's not the case. There have been many public spaces that have gone smoke-free in the last couple of years around all the cities that you see here that are part of Lane County, and this is just one more area. I work for Peace Health. I'm on the smoke-free tobacco workforce for the CHIP, and in that work, we've done a lot of smoke-free ordinance work, and I know that Peace Health would be interested in being able to use the ordinance that makes public right-of-way adjacent to smoke-free campuses something that they would be interested in doing. So I'm encouraging you to vote in favor of this ordinance. It would not be my intention to have businesses hurt. I frequent downtown businesses all the time.
Thank you. Melanie Phillips, followed by Jared Sweezy.
Back up again. Melanie Phillips, Emily Semple's ward. I am not in favor of the smoking ban. One thing that I am concerned about, also that has not been mentioned at all, is I believe that
Vaping is also a part of that as well. There are a couple of vape shops downtown. They depend on that business as well. I work at Sykes. There are a lot of people there that do not smoke. A lot of them go out to vape in their little designated shack. Many of them don't even know that their potential ability to step outside on their 15-minute break after getting yelled at on the phone all day is in jeopardy, that they may have to walk outside of downtown to be able to get a small break from their job and enjoy it. I get harassed every single day walking down the street. I've had so many bike seats stolen that I don't ride my bike anymore. I walk down and I do get the exhaust from the buses and the cars, and it's just as bad. So I feel that if you're going to go ahead and ban smoking, ban vaping, that you should also ban travel between the downtown areas if you truly want to make it safe. Otherwise, we need to look at different avenues and opportunities within the community. I hear a lot of talk about not having enough resources. There are a lot of resources. There are all these people here who care. So we need to reach out to our resources that are there.
Thank you. Jared Sweezy, followed by Christopher Hayes.
Hello, my name is Jared Sweezy, resident in Ward 2. I also reside in Portland as well. I've actually born and raised here in Eugene. Was lucky to own 2 businesses within Ward 1 downtown area. Smoke directly impacted my businesses. That's actually how I got to know Sam Kamkar and the Eugene police, because we constantly were having issues. I don't want to put any businesses out of business. I think the Eugene City Council kind of has in the past caused some problems. It was not easy being a Eugene kid trying to actually be successful in business. It cost a lot of money. There's a lot of regulations. I don't necessarily want a regulation. I just want businesses to thrive within Eugene, and I guess this might just be a gateway. I don't know, but I do want to express my support of the smoking ban. I think it'd be something to try, at the very least. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Hayes, followed by Caroline Cummings.
Good evening, everyone. Christopher Hayes. I work at a local tech company who recently moved downtown for the fiber that's being put in, and we employ 19 employees. There's a lot of businesses downtown, and I am in favor of the smoking ordinance ban. I feel that secondhand smoke is dangerous, not just to adults, but to the children that have no power to get away from it. There has been studies of outdoor smoking and secondhand smoke. Stanford University specifically ran a very long and extensive program and test on that. And yeah, being a smoker myself for a number of years, it was very difficult to quit, but I did. I'm thankful every day that I did. And I know that not being around other smokers made it a lot easier. And I would prefer to have a clean air area to bring my girls when I go downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Caroline Cummings, followed by Tracy Jocelyn.
Hello again, Caroline Cummings, Eugene resident, and I am in favor of the smoking ban, and will also tomorrow be submitting close to 300 signatures of people who are also in favor of both the smoking ban and the dog ban. And I do think that this is the beginning to something to test out. And as someone said earlier, that come November, if we're finding that if this isn't helping and this isn't working, then we do something else. But I do think we need to take some action. In particular, the city is spending money to do the placemaking and activating spaces. If we want families to come downtown, we need it to be safe and healthy. So I'm in support of the bans. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy Jocelyn, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Hello. Kind of like we're out on the town, huh? My name's Tracy Jocelyn. I currently live in Ward 7. I've been a Eugene resident for 34 years. A lot of input here tonight. probably don't have much else to say, but people have different ways of perceiving things. When I heard the idea to ban smoking in dogs downtown, I choose to perceive it as a probably illegal, selfish, and shallow chess move. Human beings are not your pawn, and Eugene is not your chess game. Okay. The University of Oregon banning smoking in dogs on 13th does give tickets, and the U of O is very discriminatory against homeless people. Just to clarify. We all agree there's a problem. I love all these people coming out. I'm a smoker. I would never smoke in front of somebody who doesn't like it. I can't stand smoking in front of children. So I guess we're back to common courtesy. I would like it expected from people downtown. I'm in homeless advocacy, and I'm also homeless, to protect homeless people from criminals. I get it, the police are a little overwhelmed. In the 10, 20 years I've been doing this, the last 2 years running a rest stop, I hate crystal meth. It is a huge problem.
Thank you. Michael Kerrigan, followed by Patrick Ludke.
Michael Kerrigan, Ward 7. Even though I'm an avid and sometimes strident non-smoker, I oppose the proposed smoking ordinance because of the disproportionate impact it could have on the unhoused, such as potential unequal enforcement that might target them. And I think they're entitled to have a smoke at an appropriate place downtown. I think it's important to focus on addressing specific behavior and not create a one-size-fits-all ordinance. We already have laws in the books that make most of the unacceptable behavior that happens downtown illegal, and we should enforce these laws. I also should have said that I oppose the dog ordinance as well. I too want downtown to be safe and welcoming place for all, but I feel these proposals are not the way to make that happen. Ultimately, we need a day center and a nighttime public shelter so the unhoused have safe places to hang out and or to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrick Ludke, followed by Charmaine Begg.
Good evening. My name is Pat Ludke. I'm a physician at the health department. I live on Bailey Hill Road in Eugene. The city of Eugene has enjoyed a very long reputation of being a leader in tobacco policy. We have data showing that this policy work has contributed to lower rates of tobacco-related diseases and deaths compared to the rest of the county. Interestingly, I think that it's been shared tonight that we all want Eugene to be a healthy, family-friendly place to live and to visit. Everyone deserves the right to be in a tobacco-free environment and to live in areas with tobacco-free settings. Interestingly as well, when I look at this from a clinical standpoint, as a physician, we don't typically think of tobacco as a contagious disease, but in many ways it has pieces of it that are contagious. We have decades, literally, of data that show that you can pass it from generation to generation with people who are already addicted. The more exposure young people have to people smoking, the more they see it as acceptable behavior, and the more likely that they are to begin smoking. Interestingly as well, the more that current smokers are around active smokers, the more difficult it is for them to quit. I see that quite readily in my clinics. I have patients routinely saying, if I could just get by that particular window of smoke, it would be easier for me to deal with that craving. Happens all the time in my 6 clinics. Communities that have effective tobacco public policies in place see lower rates of initiation and reduced use of tobacco. Policies establishing tobacco-free public spaces are one of the most effective means that we have for decreasing tobacco use in our communities. I think that it's also interesting and probably really important to note that tobacco use can differentially affect disadvantaged populations.
Thank you.
I'll submit some testimony.
Thank you, please. Charmaine Begg, followed by Susan Blaine.
Hi, it's Charmaine Begg.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
And I'm in Mike Clark's ward. I support the smoking and the dog ban. And another angle on the smoking ban is that for some reason, most smokers seem to think that the town, the beaches, the riverfront, the entire earth is their ashtray. And I'm getting sick of all the cigarette butts. I picked them up. I have a grabber I took out from the Parks Department. I pick them up at the beach and along the river. And I'd like to see the ban and the dog ban because it's mostly a bunch of big pit bulls downtown. Another thing about the Albuquerque picking people up to do day work for cash, I brought that up to Pat Farr a year ago. And if you paid people cash and did the same thing to do litter cleanup, have zero tolerance for litter, this town would look a lot better. And maybe another thing with all the people laying around on the sidewalk, I see in the editorial in the Register Guard that a CEO flew in, was going to lease a place downtown for a business, took one look at the mess, got on the plane and left. Now you're so welcoming to every bum who shows up on the Greyhound, but not to the businesses and the people who pay for everything.
Thank you. Susan Blaine, followed by Kimberly Gladen.
Good evening. I'm Susan Blaine, Ward 3. I'm speaking on behalf of Peace Health University District Sacred Heart. Peace Health is a partner with Lane County Public Health, Trillium, and United Way in the Lane County Community Health Improvement Plan. This plan surveyed the community extensively to identify the health goals that are important to Lane County residents, and the creation of smoke-free public places is one of the goals they prioritized in their responses. Peace Health supports a tobacco-free downtown and the prohibition of smoking within the downtown core and the opt-in for businesses outside of downtown. All of Peace Health campuses and properties in Lane County have been smoke-free since 2006. This includes Sacred Heart Medical Center University District serving downtown Eugene, where pediatric and adult medical offices, emergency room services, inpatient hospital facilities, and the behavioral health unit are located. And what we found is on campus, when we approach people respectfully and ask them to respect our smoke-free campus, the majority of people will stop smoking in the restricted area. The passage of this ordinance will help protect patients and those who accompany them and visit them, their families, friends, and loved ones from exposure to secondhand smoke. It will protect those vulnerable patients with asthma and lung conditions, some of them children, from being exposed to damaging secondhand smoke while they are walking on public sidewalks to gain entrance to the medical offices and services they need access to. We encourage.
Thank you. Kimberly Gladen, followed by Jill.
Kimberly Gladen, downtown. If I had my way, the world would be non-smoking. It's air pollution. It's land pollution. Cigarette butts, nicotine's a poison. Cigarette butts end up in our rivers and streams and are poisoning our water supply and poisoning our land. We've had littering laws, though, for 50 years, and people still throw their cigarette butts on the ground. We have ordinances against smoking over at the bus station, over at the library and LCC, and people still deliberately smoke over there. There's a vape shop on Broadway that they smoke inside the vape shop all the time, despite the fact the sign says no smoking in the building or within the doorway. I don't see a lot of laws and ordinances being observed in this town, and it's kind of deliberate. I saw somebody deliberately smoking a cigarette on a bicycle, rode over to one of our storm sewers and deliberately threw the cigarette butt in there. Personally, I'd like to see everything be non-smoking because, you know, if you haven't noticed, the planet is gearing up for an extinction. And you guys are bringing this about. You might laugh about it, but you're not going to keep on laughing once she starts. I mean, does she need bigger storms? Does she need more floods, more earthquakes? Whatever it takes. You know, I don't know if you can really enforce it, but, you know, I don't want any businesses to be hurt, but I would like the littering laws to be observed. I would like the no smoking in the areas which are no smoking to be observed. And I would like to see some changes in people's attitudes.
Thank you. Jill?
I just looked it up.
Followed by Kelsey Moore.
Jill Russell, and I found out I'm in Ward 2. Like I said, I just moved back to Eugene. I lived here for 28 years since the 70s. It was a really lively town. I don't know what you guys are doing. It's really boring to me. I walk from, about the dog thing, I do think you should stop the dogs from living under the bridges to get across the Coburg Road to Trader Joe's, because it's a little dangerous, so I walk out on the, anyway. and about the cigarette butts. Look at other cities, what other cities do. Paris charges 65 euros if you drop a cigarette butt. Why don't you make some money off of this stuff? And about the dogs, what they do in Italy, they let the dogs go around, but they have to have muzzles on them. I don't know.
Thank you. Kelsey Moore. Kelsey, still here? How about Misha Seymour? And after Misha, Celia Norris.
Thank you. You had said that you wanted to hear what people had to say, and I got a little mixed up. I thought there was only one thing, so I really wanted to talk about the dogs. Because, I mean, anyways, you know, on one hand, as you're probably aware, you know, we give tax breaks for downtown development, like $60 million for Capstone, and such at the same time, such psychologically hurt that proposal, which I'm against, would psychologically hurt down and out spirits in our midst. People would say, get out of town, partner, your puppy isn't a yuppie. Cities should be for everyone. It seems like things have changed over time. Also, 1996, the ordinance, I testified, 18 out of 20 people did not want that dog ordinance to go forth. So I think people lie about things. The police testified first. I used to play musical, but there wasn't there wasn't a problem with the dogs. It was manufactured. Somebody talked about benches. Santa Monica Promenade Mall has that kind of stuff over there. And also, people were disingenuous when they say, you know, there's no loitering, anti-loitering. There's 4.807 in the West University neighborhood. People get hassled just for sitting down, which is completely illegal.
Thank you.
That should be changed because it's not right for people.
Thank you. Celia Norris, followed by Stefan Streck.
Hi, my name is Celia Norris. I'm somewhere in southeast Eugene. So I am not a tobacco smoker, but I am against the ban of smoking because I would say about a third of my friends probably smoke. It doesn't really bug me. I'm an environmental studies major. There's a lot of other problems if we want to go out about air quality and stuff. I think that we should be focusing in other places. I believe that the industrial area in West Eugene, that their air quality is worse than over more downtown and East Eugene. So I think that that's a problem, but that's more with the factories. We already have bans on smoking for places that people can and can't. Yes, sometimes you're going to have to pass through some smoke, but it's the same as like if you're walking by the street. A lot of cars, a lot of trucks, you know, they smell bad. And yeah, for people having a break, they deserve their cigarette. That's just, yeah. And I do believe that a lot of our business comes from bars and that, yeah, people smoke at bars. They don't smoke inside the bars. That's awesome. I don't think that we should be smoking in enclosed places, but we should be able to smoke. I don't, but if they're outside, that's fine. It's also a cultural thing. Some people start conversations by sharing cigarettes. Oh, hey, do you have a lighter? You know, like let's continue to have a conversation.
Thank you. Stefan Streck, followed by Katie Lohr.
Once again, great to be here. It's been a fantastic night. We should all do this more often. I've learned a lot this past year about the difference between legislation and policy, and the city should not be basing legislative action after the university's policy. The university is not obligated to follow the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. They violate it all the time. They are a racist, sexist institution that discriminates against people with disabilities or alternate lifestyles. Seriously. They promote alcoholism. The university provides a shuttle that gets kids to and from parties so they can be drunk after hours. And yet, at the same time, the university does not provide transportation for students who have mobility issues to get to class on time or to get home. This is not an institution that the city wants to be modeling itself after. The university has a lot of problems that need to be addressed. And banning smoking and banning dogs is not going to do anything except make criminals of people who are abiding all the laws that they're expected to. Cigarettes are not that bad. And I'm not just saying that because I want money from big tobacco. There's a lot of self-destructive behavior that people engage in, and cigarettes keep people occupied. They keep their hands occupied, keep them from talking too much. Cigarettes are great, honestly. I thought cigarettes were bad for the longest time. I said, pretty girls don't smoke, but honestly,
Thank
it's
you.
okay.
Thank you. Katie Lohr, followed by Liam Sherlock.
My name is Katie Lohr. I live in Eugene, and I'm a student at University of Oregon. I'm also the community health intern for United Way in Lane County, and I'm the youngest member on the Lane Equity Coalition. My parents are refugees, Hmong refugees to be specific, from the Vietnam War. Many of my family members find solace from their troubles and their post-traumatic stress through tobacco and alcohol. So I'm pretty much exposed and experienced with that. I have firsthand experience how socioeconomic factors affect disproportionately affected and marginalized communities. That is why I support smoke-free downtown ordinance. Of course, as a community, we have a responsibility to address the main influences of tobacco use behavior. We also have a responsibility to promote healthy behavior in order to reduce the prevalence of tobacco, and that is the main point of this. The main point is to get rid of this repetitive cycle, this toxic cycle of making tobacco okay by allowing people to smoke in downtown where there's frequent families that go to the businesses. You're exposing the children to that negativity, and you're making it okay. And that's the whole point. You're trying to stop the prevalence of tobacco. And this policy will help protect people who are coming in. This is a policy that won't solve all the issues, but it's a crucial part.
Thank you. Liam Sherlock, and finally Peter Frost.
Good evening, Liam Sherlock. And I'm just reading from the government CDC website for December 2016. The statistics for deaths in the United States for 2016 due to tobacco use is 480,000. If there was a business, an industry that contributed to almost 500,000 deaths in this country every single year, would you as a council be advocating for allowing that continued business to go forward, despite the fact that there might be some businesses, jobs lost, which I frankly doubt? No, that's ridiculous. You would never, by your wildest dreams, allow for some kind of a polluting industry to contribute to 500,000 deaths in this country per year and say, well, people should have their freedom. The point is that you, as a council, have the ability to restrict use of tobacco, which is clearly a toxin in this culture. And if you don't stand up and do the right thing and say, you can do it in your home, you can do it in your yard, but you can't do it in a public space, because it's not only infringing upon your health, it's compromising the health of the youth, and it's contributing to a culture of degradation and frankly, pollution. And it's something that I really urge this council to do the right thing and support this ban. If it doesn't work out, you can change it in November.
Thank you. And finally, Peter Frost, still here? Okay. That closes the hearing. Are there any comments, Alan? Okay.
First, a couple of clarifications. So this is only in public spaces, sidewalks, and alleys and plazas in downtown, correct? It's not, it already is illegal to smoke inside a business or a restaurant or outside 10 feet of a business, 25 feet of a government building. Second, it would be lawful to smoke in your home if you live downtown. That's not illegal, and it wouldn't be under this ordinance. The campus ordinance is a city ordinance enforced by EPD, not U of L PD. And then finally, Mr. City Manager, there's a provision in here that allows the city manager is authorized to permit smoking after 6 p.m. in designated areas adjacent to private establishments that request such permission and that comply with the rules adopted by the city manager. And there's another section that allows them to be in the right of way. So how would you apply that, especially when it comes to the good, hardworking people that come here tonight? And the point of this isn't to put anybody out of business. So how would you apply that when it comes to some of these businesses that are downtown that think that would be deadly to their business to ban smoking in the right of way?
Maybe, Catherine, you can just clarify any pieces of that, and then we can talk from there.
So the rules haven't been written yet. Obviously, there's the chicken and the egg process for if the ordinance goes into effect, we would have rules that implement this section. But it would be to allow a business that is located within the downtown core to apply for a carve-out exception to be able to allow to have some smoking areas within the downtown core on the right of ways starting after 6 p.m. So how it would be implemented, the rules haven't been written yet, but that's the overall that's the intended purpose of that opt-out.
It could be if a bar wanted to apply for that, they could apply and say our employees need to go smoke out in the back or out in the front sidewalk, and the city manager could allow that.
Correct. Starting at the way the ordinance is written, the way the ordinance is written, they could apply for that.
Employees or customers.
Starting at 6 p.m. though.
After 6 p.m.
Yeah, after 6 p.m. So the way the ordinance is currently drafted, they couldn't request to allow their employees to go out and smoke on a certain portion of the sidewalk at noon. And the 6 p.m. date was chosen when there was less just general foot pedestrian traffic walking to and from and using the public sidewalks.
That's after 6 p.m.
After 6 p.m.
And then finally, what is our fine for littering? And how is that enforced? And you might have to get back to me on that.
I'm going to have to get back.
Okay, Councilor Semple.
Thank you. Again, thank you to everyone for coming out. I feel a little bit like bait and switch because this proposed ordinance came out of a downtown safety issue. The dogs, it makes sense to me. Again, I understand it. But the tobacco, it's a health issue, and we were working on downtown safety. So I think that points directly to being classist. Bars, cigarettes and drinking go together. I used to smoke. I hate it. It gives me a headache. I walk past sidelines really fast. Horsehead and Jameson at least have somewhat protected areas. To say these people can't have their business operating before 6 o'clock is ridiculous. There's plenty of people who like to go to bars in the day. Retired people, disabled people who can't get out at night. It's their social life. But we can't just say to businesses that have been there 15 years, oh, too bad, you can't have your customers anymore. Yeah, you can smoke inside a residence, but not if you're a renter. They're all signed anti-smoking things. If your apartment has a designated place, you can smoke there. But if your apartment just goes out on the sidewalk, you can't smoke. You have to walk a couple blocks. And you're not, hanging out on the corner all day long. I don't think that this is going to do what we were thinking it was going to do, which is get rid of criminals downtown. It's not the homeless. We've talked about how that's gotten intertwined. I don't like cigarette smoke. I wish everybody would quit, but I don't think this is fair. I think it's mean. Thank you.
Councilor Clark?
City Attorney answered my question, which was just about the fact that the 6 p.m. time frame was arbitrary. Yes?
Not entirely arbitrary. It was based on when people, it was
What
based
did
on
you
when
use
people
for a
would
measure?
be leaving. It was based on when people had generally left work when it came to when many of the businesses were open or closed downtown, which is when we were looking at the nightlife businesses, those would be the ones we would anticipate would be applying for this opt-out. And so the businesses that would not be applying for the opt-out, some of the general commercial businesses downtown, they generally are closed by 6. So arbitrary in the sense of we had to pick a time, yes, but there was some thought put into what time that should be.
Why pick a time for those that, when there is still the possibility that you're going to cause harm to those businesses? Why pick a time?
The thought would be the possibility of the exception swallowing the rule.
I can think of 3.
If you have a ban, so the proposed ordinance is to ban smoking within the downtown core. If the opt-out says at any time someone could apply, and obviously there would be a basis for the application and granting or denying it, but you could have, if someone can opt out of the ban at any time, you would have the possibility of having the overall core be eroded away by a bunch of smoking areas. So if you don't want the core, if you don't want the downtown core, you can change the boundary. You can change the time. This is all entirely within the councils. This is just the way it was originally drafted. But certainly all of these things are entirely within your.
Thank you. I sense that whether or not this has enough support to pass is a close question. I certainly will offer an amendment to make that 24/7 if it has enough votes to pass. Thank you.
Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. Some time ago, I thought this was a good idea. I even suggested it to Chief Kearns at one point. But then I started thinking about unintended consequences. And I'm thinking about the employees who work downtown. If they have their cigarette break, if they have their break from work and they want to smoke, I can't imagine walking or running a few blocks to have a cigarette, which would not be a good thing. And it would then put all the cigarette butts in the surrounding neighborhoods. So I think that it requires more thought about what may happen as a result of it. Thank you.
City Manager?
I just wanted to respond with the timing of these particular ordinances. This particular one around smoking is not intended at all as a public safety. It really truly is a public health. You might remember the council prior to your winter break gave direction to the staff very specifically to come back with ordinances both on smoking and a dog ordinance. So we've done both of those, and that just happens to be what the intersection is. The timing is such that there has been expressed quite a bit of interest by the council as well as others that as we move into the spring and into the summer season for the downtown, you've expressed an interest in trying to do something and move something forward. And this is just one of several things. And so part of it's a public safety conversation. Part of it's a public health conversation. You've had several conversations about potential infrastructure. You've had conversations about wayfinding. You've had conversations about programming and other kinds of things in the downtown. And so the intersections of these two coming together actually is in response to your direction previously and really is trying to be responsive to what you have expressed an interest in trying to do some things as you move into the downtown. That's why they just happen to be on the same agenda. They are not tied together with safety. Smoking is purely a health issue, not a safety issue.
Any other comments from council? All right, I think we are done. Thank you all. I have incredible respect for your endurance staying here through the whole meeting. Thanks so much.